Steve Kane,
Here.
Jan Gris, present. Lisa Marks, and Carla Torres de Luna. Okay, hopefully they'll be in shortly. Flag salute. Shall we have Elizabeth? You want to help us out on this one?
Okay,
Ready,
ready.
begin.
I pledge
I pledge
allegiance to the
allegiance to the
flag
flag
of the
of the
United
United
States of
States of
America
America
and to the
and to the
republic for
republic
which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with liberty
liberty and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Do we have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, 3-0. Do we have any public comments, Diego?
No public comment.
All right. So I think it's time that we begin with our board workshop. We have a very special person that's going to help us get through this very exciting evening. And I am really excited that Diego was able to get this excellent teacher and a facilitator to help us with our goals and uh, help us put things together so that we can make things happen. There is one thing, a couple of things I do want to say is that we have generated these goals. And one of the things that I think is important to remember is that sometimes goals cannot be achieved in the first year, but we set the stage so that they can be completed eventually. That we have to nurture, we've planted the seed, and then we keep growing and growing and growing. And so I don't ever want us to feel that if we didn't get it fully uh, to fruition the first year, that doesn't mean that we failed. But what it means is that we have got it started. And that's the most important thing. And what I always go back to as a teacher, the first time you work on a lesson and it goes well, but I should have done this or I should have done that. And so the next year you tweak it and you do it a little differently. And then the following year, oh, let's do this. And so when we've got some pretty big goals. And so we're going to have to be looking at this. And one reason that I wanted our key top level administrators here with us, our key people, is because they're the ones that are going to help guide our teachers through this. And if we didn't have with us Erica and Gwen and Kip, I this would be I can't see the goals getting off the ground. And so I really appreciate the time that you're giving us to help us make these goals come to fruition. And I look forward to a very we discussion where we can feel free to share our ideas. So I hand this over to Sepia and let you do your thing. Or Diego, I
Th-
don't know where you start now. You
Thank
guys
you
take over.
so much, Miss President. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Superintendent Diego, and board members for trusting me and for inviting me back. You are an amazing governance team, and it is always a pleasure to work with all of you. This is kind of different that we are working virtually together. It always, whenever I do any of these type of workshops virtually, reminds me of Brady Bunch with all the little squares. But I am here with you, and I'm going to try my absolute best to make this as engaging and interactive as possible. This is your workshop. I'm just a facilitator. So I will help guide discussions, and the theme for the evening is focus. So write that down, please. Make a note of it, because we are going to, with everything that we'll do tonight for the next 3.5 hours, we are going to really bring your focus and attention to one of my favorite quotes by Stephen Covey, which is, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing, right? So it's a very simple line, but it says it all. And I ask you to reflect on, what is your main thing? So take a moment, write down what your main thing is as members of your governance team. I see that you're all busy writing. Thank you so much for coming in prepared and getting right to work. So remember, the theme is focus, and we are going to take Stephen Covey's quote and really practice that tonight. And as we begin this new year, 2021, we have had a difficult year for all of us on many different levels. And all of you folks in education, you had to pivot and overnight design online learning, distance learning, and really manage educating your students in a completely different way. For all of you, for your teachers, for your staff, it sounds like you're doing an amazing job educating your students. And so the goal is to keep moving forward, set goals. As Jan said, there's so much that you all want to do. And in my conversations with all of you, it is very evident that you have ambitious goals. You want to continue moving forward, and continue providing your students the tools and the techniques and the skills they need to be successful beyond leaving your school district. So again, the theme is focus, and we're going to really take Stephen Covey's quote to heart, keeping the main thing main thing. And so what I like to do is to begin by setting this workshop on the most wonderful note of checking in with each of you. I want to know how you're doing. First of all, how are you today? So how was your day? And number two is, select your favorite person and share a few qualities of this person. What makes this person your favorite person? So a few qualities. But first, how was your day? I am going to go in order of how I see you on the screen. I have to tell you that yesterday I had the pleasure of working with your Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Erica Sanchez, Student Services Director, Kip Ward, and your Special Education Director, Gwen. Is it Buckwer? Did I completely butcher it, Gwen?
It's Bakiran.
Bakiran. That's actually easier. I was making it harder. I complicate everything. Bakiran. Thank you for that. So I had the pleasure of meeting with them and your superintendent yesterday. We had a fantastic afternoon. I can tell you that what makes a district really strong is the village. You are the villagers. You are the village that keeps this village moving forward, and you have the most amazing village. So with that, I'm going to start on top of my screen how I see you on my screen. And with that, Jan, you are first. Madam President, if you don't mind sharing with us, how are you today and your favorite person?
Um, well, it's been a tough week at home. My grandson, as you guys know, I help with virtual learning and ABA, and he's had a rough week, a real rough week, and it's taken the toll on both my daughter and I. And I shared earlier that we're kind of emotionally spent. It's been really tough. I mean, it's been rough. Um, so I'm kind of emotionally drawn out, though. Just getting back and seeing everybody, I'm excited now. So I'm in here, which is good. It's good to sometimes be able to do adult things and get yourself. But as you know, working with special needs children is not an easy thing. Um, and in regards to, um, I don't know, I'm going to have to pass on that and think about it a little bit on the person.
No worries. We'll come back to you. And thanks for sharing about your day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stephen, would you like to go next?
Okay. Uh, Being retired and not having any children or grandchildren to take care of on a daily basis, except for the dogs, uh, I can't say that it's real stressful on me. And being retired for almost 8 years now, um, other than not being able to go where I want to go when I want to go, this pandemic personally hasn't affected me very much at all, actually. But what it has done is leave a constant pall, for lack of a better word, the idea of what's happening to everybody else and feeling so badly for them. So the good thing about being on the board is I feel like I have an opportunity to try to help some of that suffering. Even going back to I personally, the meals that we've given to those kids when the school shut down through the summer is one of the uh, biggest accomplishments I could think of that I had a little bit to do with in my lifetime. I mean, it was that important to me. Them getting fed first was far more important than anything else. And the things that we've done since then to try to help them, not just throw them to the wolves, like Diego getting laptops for everybody, not just some people, making sure that we have the hotspots covered so everybody has access to internet. Those are the things that make me feel better. If I didn't have that, I don't know that I could feel that good. At least I feel like I'm helping contribute to try to help people in this crisis. So that part makes me feel good. Um, Favorite person, that's really tough to say when you're almost 70 years old. I've known a lot of people in my lifetime. But turning to education, I think I was very fortunate when I first started teaching to get to know Bernice Smith. She, right from the beginning, seemed to understand in my idea of what education was. She had a great way of dealing with all kinds of people, no matter whether they were irate or they were nice, didn't matter. She had a wonderful way of dealing with people that I tried to emulate as we went on. But I'd have to say she had the most influence on me as far as education goes.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen, for sharing. I really enjoy hearing also about how you have been managing the pandemic with your students and providing your students the tools that they need to be successful, that you
Yes.
didn't just leave it to chance that, well, maybe they have a computer or a laptop, maybe they have hotspots, maybe they have enough or adequate connection. So I'm sure that that has been received well, and I'm sure that your community, your families appreciate that. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for sharing about your special person. All right,
Well,
Elizabeth.
Today, well, every day is a full day for me. um, it's working in a school system, it's, and I work for migrants. So right now I'm working with my 11th graders, reaching out to them, touching bases to complete their ILPs. It's a individual learning plan needs assessment, to gauge kind of where they're at, and getting them prepared for next year. So in some of these cases, some kids are doing great, and in some cases they're not. So it's those tough conversations, that you have to have sometimes with certain family members, mom or dad, and um, as trying to figure out how they're struggling and what their needs are and how to support them. So it's hard um, not to feel, for families, in their current situation, and a lot of families are struggling right now. And that's the reality. And so um, you kind of at the end of the day, it's just kind of reflecting on how your day was. And um, there's a lot of good in the world, and um, I think as leaders we play a big role in that, in providing, um, when we reach out to people, whether it's our colleagues or people that work for us, um, it's always showing that kindness and that sense of grace, to one another, because we don't know what kind of day people are having. And so it's always well appreciated when people always ask you, how are you doing? How was your day? Because and you start off your conversations that way versus getting right to business, because that just shows, the quality of the person, that they care about, the individual and not just the work. Um, and so that's really important right now for all of us to reflect on that and remember that. And for me, I think I have two, but um, my grandchildren, my two first grandbabies were both boys. They're born a day apart. Um, my oldest grandson is autistic, and for us, um, it just, you don't. They're just so special in their own little, you know, um, little way. And then my second grandson, um, he actually was born with issues with his heart. He had to have 4 open heart surgeries. He had his first when he was 5 months old. And so he, to me, is, I think he's that person because he's so full of life. I see so much in him, and he's just such a happy baby, such a thriving baby now, and we're just very blessed and thankful that we still have him, and appreciating those moments with him as he's growing up, and just seeing him, becoming his own person now. So those to me are those are my two favorites.
Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing two of your favorites. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I see right in the middle of my screen is our wonderful colleague who is translating for us. Thank you so much. I've never met you, but thank you so much for translating and keeping everyone posted on what we're discussing. So let's move on to Superintendent Ochoa. Would you like to share, Diego?
I would. Thank you, Seppi. I'm doing good. Really I'm feeling really good about our meeting yesterday that we had with Kip and Gwen and Erica and myself and yourself. But something happened today that really kind of brought me to a very focused place, which was I went to the 7-Eleven down the street from Liz's work, down the street from the high school. and I saw two of my students there, and they were in a car, and their dad was drinking alcohol in the middle of the day, and he was smoking um, something in the middle of the day. And I just saw my students in their car, and it just made me just say we just have to help these kids. We gotta support families. We gotta support kids. We gotta remember that not everybody is as lucky as we are, and not everybody is facing the same challenges that we are. So it just strengthened my resolve and strengthened my commitment. And I said, no, you know, I know what happens in a regular school year. Those kids are in one of our schools 180 days a year. That's what happens for them between 7:45 and 3:15. And that's a special thing. Um, and I want to get back to that. And in the meantime, I want to do everything we can to support them every single day that we can. So that's how I'm feeling, just really passionate, I guess. And then my favorite person, I always have to say my wife. My wife is just so kind and so sweet, and she's just a cheerleader for everyone in her life. Every person that's in her life, she loves that person and she supports that person. And yeah, she's an amazing person. But I have a lot, so I'm gonna also talk about my mom and my grandma and my brothers, and I have a huge family, so we'll be here until midnight tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Diego. I can completely relate. I come from a large family as well, and I've had the privilege and the honor of having many, many mentors and role models growing up, many favorite people. And we sometimes forget that students come to us from all different backgrounds. They come to us with all different types of issues and baggages, as I call them. And the ability for educators to meet students where the student is at and help and support in the ways the student needs help and support, because some of these cases are really unique, and they may not be in your um, they may not be included in your discussions, and they may not be included in your policies and all that. Very unique situations, but those are the students who can fall through the cracks and be forgotten easily. And so it's really critical to pay extra attention, as you did, bring your focus and attention to every student, because in your positions you get to serve each and every student in the same way, and you get to support them as they need support. All right, so I see that we have our wonderful administrators and senior cabinet members that show up on my screen next. I have Erica. Erica, would you like to share briefly with us? How was your day?
Hi, everybody. I had a great day. I think that every day that passes as we go through COVID, I have to remember all the blessings and all the small things to medium things and large things that we have to be thankful for. So I feel very thankful today and thankful just to be well and to be alive and to be functioning. And that in itself is something worthy to mention tonight. My favorite person, I have several, but this one is hard because I have two children and they're both equally favorite. I have a son and a daughter. They are just the measure that I use to determine whether or not things are good enough. If good enough for my kids, I think we're doing an awesome job, and I just love being a mom, and they are a blessing in my life. They're just everything to me. So, my two favorite ones.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Moving on, Gwen, you're next on my screen.
Hi, Seppi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for asking, that question. How are we doing this week? I think when you're in special ed, every day is a busy day. So it's another busy week for us, but a positive week, I should say. Today we did our last workshop of the year. 30 minutes ago, we just finished a workshop, to educate our site administrators and also our new teachers when it comes to special education process and IEP development. And I believe it really did go well. We got a lot of good questions and comments from our leaders, in each of our site, right? In terms of like supporting their students with special needs. And we're just grateful for all of the administrators and staff that we have, who have been putting so much effort in ensuring that our students with special needs are um, being accommodated, every day in each of their classroom. When you ask about who is my favorite person, I like all of a sudden all of these names came to my mind, but thinking about my most favorite, that's going to be my husband Ryan. He's the most caring and most loving person that I know. Today I did work from home because of all of those back to back meetings. And he just gave me food every meal, and even snacks in between, which is the sweetest thing that I would never get when I'm working on site. So I really do appreciate all of the love that he has given us on a daily basis, and he will always be my most favorite person for as long as I'm alive.
Thanks for sharing that, Gwen. And there are definitely advantages to working from home, right? You get great service. Fabulous. And Kip, you are the next person on my screen. Would you like to share?
Sure. Thanks, Seppi. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, it's been a busy week. I had a great day today. I also worked from home today, and phone calls and emails and communicating with people and trying to help move the district forward. But in terms of a conversation I had today that really um, made a good point to me, my mom. Some of you may know my mom is now living with us. She unfortunately her house burned down about 7 weeks ago, and she's living with us. And I was having a conversation with her while I was eating my sandwich today, and I said something about I want to turn the page on 2020 and get to 2021, and she said, "Yeah, that's a good plan, but don't wish your days away." And I took that as like another good piece of wisdom from my mom, who we call Old Patty. She's, and she's okay with that. That's her nickname. It's Old Patty, and we love her. So that was a good little piece of information for me to get today while I was having my sandwich. Favorite person is without a doubt my wife Megan. She is a kind, amazing, caring person. She's a teacher, and I love her so much. She's been a blessing in my life since I walked through the door of the restaurant that she owned, looking for some chicken soup, and ended up meeting her. And she's been a blessing ever since, and she's a great woman. So that's my person.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. I really appreciate and enjoy hearing your stories. And I feel as if I'm getting to know your families and your partners and your spouses through these conversations and workshops. And Kip, I have to say that you're so blessed to have this opportunity to have your mom around and spend time with her on a daily basis and see her. So enjoy and just appreciate every moment of it. All right, Carla, you are next. I don't see you, but I'm assuming that you are here if you're ready to share.
Yeah, hi
Hello
everybody.
and welcome.
I feel really bad. I can't get this camera to work. So if how we're saying how we're feeling, I'm feeling frustrated. I mean to start, but you know what? This is how it goes and we'll just roll with it, just like 2020. My apologies for being late. I totally forgot. I've had a really busy work week and intense meetings back to back. And then I was watching the city council meeting right now because they're gonna vote on something. And by the way, there's a Raider game. And so my family was all wrapped up in Raider, and I'm like, and then I got a text. I'm like, oh, what? Oh my God, the meeting. So I'm just being real with you all. But I'm here, and grateful to be here with you all. And I am not gonna pick a favorite person. Oh no, it's gonna be my family. my whole family, my husband, my two kids, my mom, my sisters, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. I lean on it, and my best friend and my comadres. I lean on everybody for different reasons. So, and I am also grateful for all of you. And there's some of you that I text more frequently than others, and I appreciate you putting up with all my texts.
Thanks, Carla. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your honesty and letting us know what was going on. And that's just life, right? Life happens. As some of you know, I'm back to school, almost done. I'll be done in about 5 or 6 more months. And one of our professors always says, if something happens and you can't turn in an assignment on time or contribute to a discussion board or any of that, just know that I understand because life happens. And I always thought that's really sweet that he reminds us, and that's so true. So thanks for being here, Carla. And I see Lisa Marks on my screen. Lisa, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you in person, and welcome to your position as a board member.
Thank you.
So we are starting by talking about your day, sharing about your day, perhaps high or low, however you choose to share with your colleagues. And also, if you like to share your favorite person and qualities of that person that makes him or her your favorite.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Um, my story is similar to Carla's. It's been a very, very busy work week this week, and I was late because I was working. I lost track of time. So happy to be here, happy to have it be close to the end of the week. For a couple of reasons, and one of which is my one son will be entering my household for the holidays Saturday morning, so I'm excited. And that takes me to favorite person, which is impossible to say. I mean, like, how do you pick? I am also like Carla in that regard, that my family is everything. And we have a very tight family, not just my nuclear family, but my family of origin. And I'm blessed in that we are all so close. And it's hard to pick. I just love them all equally. And every time I get to interact with any of them, my heart is happy. And so I don't have a favorite. I would not want to pick a favorite, and they always want me to, and I don't want to.
That's all right. Thank you. Thanks, Lisa, for sharing. And I have to tell you, I've heard so many wonderful things about you as a fabulous addition to the Holster governance team. And I know your colleagues are super excited to have you on board. So welcome
Well, that's very
to the
sweet.
governance team.
It's nice to meet you. And I'm excited to be a part of the team.
Fabulous, fabulous. All right. So everyone had the opportunity to share. And as you know, these sharings are really critical. Most of the really inspirational, effective, empowering leaders, most of the leading organizations that are doing wonderful things and then achieving results are the ones who spend the time they need to connect on a personal level. So it's really critical to spend the necessary time to really connect before you begin business. So that's what we try to do with all the workshops that I facilitate. All right. So at the beginning, I ask you all to write based on Stephen Covey's quote, what is your main thing? So remember the quote said, the main thing is to keep the main thing, which I feel is just really funny to even read it and reflect on it because it's so simple, right? You always keep the focus. And again, the theme for this workshop is focus. Bring your focus back to what is it that you want to achieve in this coming year. And if you have multiple areas, which based on my conversations with all of you, there's certainly a number of areas you work on. what do you work on first? As Jan reminded us at the beginning, there's so much that you want to do, but you cannot really get everything done all in this next year. You also still will be dealing with the pandemic and online education and distance education. And so picking and choosing where you want to focus your attention and where you want to allocate your resources is really critical. And we'll get to your goals. Do all of you have a copy of the agenda?
Mhm.
I hope that you
Yes.
all have the agenda. Okay, so just briefly to go over what we'll be working on, there are two items I like to bring your attention to. And what I would like to do with those two, one is your norms and protocols for effective governance, and also establishing your governance handbook. Those two items I suggest that we table for now and we'll bring back at a future workshop. The reason for that is it's much more effective to do and to work on establishing your governance handbook when we can be in person. The second reason for that is rather than just revising it because you have a new board member, it makes more sense to start almost from scratch, because anytime you have even one new board member, you have a brand new board, you have a brand new team. And so the ability to take in everyone's ideas and desires for your governance handbook, set processes and protocols, and all of that. We can begin conversations at the end of our workshop, and then we'll hopefully be able to continue and complete that at a future workshop. And if that sounds good to you, we are going to begin. I do have a video that I want to show you, and it is one that I have been showing to my governance team members that I get the pleasure to work with. And I feel it's really critical as you're setting goals for this next year and you're embarking on some new initiatives to watch this video. So are you all okay with that? Are you all good?
Yeah.
And I can share my screen, and let's see. I got it ready earlier, and I'm glad you're using Zoom because it's definitely, um, I'm definitely much more comfortable utilizing Zoom. So let me just get this ready. Any questions, comments, anything that has come to mind, especially when I ask you to talk about, or not so much talk about, but reflect on your main thing. Anything that came to mind, feel free to unmute and share.
Well, for my main thing, I put every child gets the equal opportunity to excel at each school site. We're, we're really trying to make sure that each child gets the same opportunity at each site.
Mhm.
And we don't have that right now. And that's important to us, that they have the same opportunities at each site.
And Jen, I don't think it's unique to your district. I think across our country, things have not been, they may have been equal, but they haven't been, there's no equity, right? They haven't been equitable. They have been equal in some sense, but that doesn't really address the problem of the digital divide that we're experiencing with the pandemic. That's just one area that has really come to surface and has gotten a lot of focus, because we are seeing the difference in connectivity level depending on where you live, and so that's just one of the areas. And I know you're looking at multiple issues and areas to manage.
Right.
So for the sharing of screen, I do need you to give me sharing screen privileges, or I could send you the link and you could show it. You tell me, Jan, how you want
I
to
I am
proceed.
not a tech person to ask.
Okay,
You-
Diego.
Why don't you send it to me and I'll add it to the stream here.
Okay, so let me.
Mhm.
I will do that. And if you can show it, that would be fantastic. Let me just, all right. All right. Okay, it's on its way. Check your email. I just emailed it to you. And be ready to write down reflections as you're watching this video. I hope you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, then I apologize. It won't be new, but if you have not, or even if you have seen it, if you can just share your reflections after you have had the opportunity to watch it. And I feel that it's extremely relevant to what we're talking about and what we're going to be discussing, which is goals for 2021. Diego, did you receive it? Did it make it?
I just got it. Yeah, I'm gonna work on it.
Fabulous.
Just a
Good,
second.
good, good. Very nice. So while Diego is working on that, any other reflections on your main thing as you think about your students, as you think about programs, initiatives for next year? Feel free to unmute and share.
Well, kind of picking up with what Jan said, um, Carla, Jan, and I ran on one of the things we ran on the one word equity, and it was a big part of our first goal setting, and I'm fairly happy with the progress that we have made. But one of the things I've noticed is that when you try to be equitable, it actually helps your school district. It helps get things done. It helps in a positive way. The idea of excluding people, to me, was negative right from the beginning. If you want to be positive and you want everyone to learn, you'll be a much more successful school district. So that's kind of what I want to continue our focus on. That all programs, every school has equity, and we're not there yet, but I'd like to keep working on it.
Mm-hmm. And that is a great goal to work on. In my conversations with all of you, the conversation that we were able to have, you mentioned that as one area that you're working on, and you began working on it when you first started on the board, and now you're continuing to work on it. I see that Diego has been successful.
Yes.
I'm getting closer.
That's all right.
You can all see it's working. So
Yeah.
Yes.
as soon as it picks up, as soon as it catches, we should all hear this.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And
So
thank
the
you to
title-
Brandon. And thank you to Brandon, because as soon as you asked me that, Seppi, I started feverishly texting him. He sent me some ideas on how to do it. So I said, okay, let me try that.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thank goodness for our technology
Woo!
Okay.
individuals, right? Professional. Oh, there you go. Probably have to turn it up, Diego.
Yeah, I can't hear it.
Can you guys hear it?
No.
No.
Okay. The
Says
volume
the
should.
screen was muted. Maybe.
I have a share screen capability. Does anybody else have that green box on Zoom lit?
Where it says share with a green
I
arrow,
don't.
Yeah.
I have it.
Yeah.
Diego has it disabled for us to do that, so
Hi,
we
Brandon.
won't be able do it.
Yeah, it's because he's the host.
Yep.
Oh, I can see that disabled it.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Well, hopefully he's figuring out the volume issue. And I think when we watch videos, if we go off video and mute, that also helps it helps the quality of the
Are
video.
you proud?
There.
Everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today on trial we have modern day schooling. Glad you could come. Not only does he make fish climb trees, but also makes them climb down and do a 10-mile run. Tell me, school, are you proud of the things you've done? Turning millions of people into robots, do you find that fun? Do you realize how many kids relate to that fish? Swimming upstream in class, never finding their gifts, thinking they are stupid, believing they are useless? Well, the time has come, no more excuses. I call school to the stand and accuse him of killing creativity, individuality, and being intellectually abusive. He's an ancient institution that has outlived his usage. So, Your Honor, this concludes my opening statement, and if I may present the evidence of my case, I will prove it.
Proceed.
Exhibit A. Here's a modern day phone. Recognize it? Here's a phone from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Stay with me. Here's a car from today, and here's a car from 150 years ago. Big difference, right? Well, get this. Here's a classroom of today, and here's a class we used 150 years ago. Now, ain't that a shame? In literally more than a century, nothing has changed. Yet you claim to prepare students for the future? But with evidence like that, I must ask, do you prepare students for the future or the past? I did a background check on you and let the record show that you were made to train people to work in factories, which explains why you put students in straight rows, nice and neat, tell them sit still, raise your hand if you want to speak, give them a short break to eat, and for 8 hours a day, tell them what to think. Oh, and make them compete to get an A letter which determines product quality, hence grade A of meat. I get it. Back then, times were different. We all have a past. I myself am no Gandhi. But today, we don't need to make robot zombies. The world has progressed, and now we need people who think creatively, innovatively, critically, independently, with the ability to connect. See, every scientist will tell you that no two brains are the same, and every parent with 2 or more children will confirm that claim. So please explain why you treat students like cookie cutter frames or snapback hats, giving them this one-size-fits-all crap.
Watch your language.
Sorry, Your Honor, but if a doctor prescribed the exact same medicine to all of his patients, the results will be tragic. So many people would get sick, yet when it comes to school, this is exactly what happens, this educational malpractice, where one teacher stands in front of 20 kids, each one having different strengths, different needs, different gifts, different dreams, and you teach the same thing the same way? That's horrific. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant should not be acquitted. This may be one of the worst criminal offenses ever to be committed. And let's mention the way you treat your employees.
Objection. Overruled. I want to hear this.
It's a shame. I mean, teachers have the most important job on the planet, yet they're underpaid? No wonder so many students are short-changed. Let's be honest. Teachers should earn just as much as doctors, because a doctor can do heart surgery and save the life of a kid, but a great teacher can reach the heart of that kid and allow him to truly live. See, teachers are heroes that often get blamed, but they're not the problem. They work in a system without many options or rights. Curriculums are created by policymakers, most of which have never taught a day in their life. Just obsessed with standardized tests. They think bubbling in a multiple choice question will determine success. That's outlandish. In fact, these tests are too cruel to be used and should be abandoned, but don't take my word for it. Take Frederick J. Kelly, the man who invented standardized testing, who said, and I quote, "These tests are too cruel to be used and should be abandoned." Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if we continue down this road, the results will be lethal. I don't have much faith in school, but I do have faith in people. And if we can customize healthcare, cars, and Facebook pages, then it is our duty to do the same for education, to upgrade it, change it, do away with school spirit, because that's useless. unless we're working to bring the spirit out of each and every student. That should be our task. No more common core. Instead, let's reach the core of every heart in every class. Sure, math is important, but no more than art or dance. Let's give every gift an equal chance. I know this sounds like a dream, but countries like Finland are doing impressive things. They have shorter school days, teachers make a decent wage, homework is non-existent, and they focus on collaboration instead of competition. But here's the kicker, boys and girls. Their educational system outperforms every other country in the world. Other places like Singapore are succeeding rapidly. Schools like Montessori, programs like Khan Academy, there is no single solution. But let's get moving, because while students may be 20% of our population, they are 100% of our future. So let's attend to their dreams, and there's no telling what we can achieve. This is a world in which I believe, a world where fish are no longer forced to climb trees. I'll rest my case.
Thanks, Diego. Customizing education. That's an idea. So how many of you raise of hand? Have you seen this video? Who has seen it already before? Lisa? Okay. All right. So let's open up discussion and talk about this idea. First of all, reflection on the video. And then this idea of customizing education. And really reflecting on what are we teaching our students, and are we preparing students for the future, or are we basically just teaching to the text and trying to get to complete each day without much reflection, without much preparation for the future? So let's begin. This time I'm going to start just in the middle of the screen and share as much as you like to share, reflections about the video, and also what does this customizing education mean? And is this part of your plan for next year? And when we're done with the sharing, I'll share with you my summary of my conversations with all of you, phone calls, and the focus areas for this coming year. So let's begin with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, would you like to share?
I think this kind of reflected on a little bit of one of the workshops Steve and I participated in for CSBA. And there was a video also kind of, touching um, uh, on that aspect of, and actually the same reference of the fish. And, he and I have, we having been children who struggled through school, having ADD and understanding that the system wasn't designed for us. Um, and certain years, depending on the teacher, you felt like you were the brightest star, and other teachers feeling like you were the dumbest kid in the classroom. And that's tough for kids who don't um, fit into that standard way of learning, and the standardized test and everything. It's a bigger conversation. There's a lot of things. He put so many truths out there that have never been put in such a way that is so that you can so easily understand. Um, but I think everything that he said was true. Um, and but the thing is, that just seems so overwhelming. Um, how do you do that? How do you get there? Our district with as many sites and staff and programs. How do we how do we start changing that mindset in our system to be there for our kids in the way that they need it to be? um, and eliminate. I mean, we're a public institution. We're mandated to do certain things by the state for funding, etc. You know, it's like they're tying our hands to just get, you know, for us to check this off. And it, you know, our kids aren't a box to check off. That's just not how we should have education anymore. And again, you know, education has not evolved in this country. And you know, I just I wish we were there. I wish we knew, you know, it's like, where do you start? I know with Diego, um, you know, if that was something that we said we want to we want to get this accomplished and do those things, that he would be the first one on board, and trying to figure that out. So it's just a matter of, I think, as a consensus of us, you know, as a group, you know, how that you know, video impacted us, and what are we committed, um, in bringing forward to to bring about that change.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I do agree with you that education has not evolved. Many other industries have, as he showed in his video. If you look at the phone, right? If you look at the car, you look at really any other industry, it has evolved, but not education. That is the bad news. The good news is that each of you are in the position to make some changes, to bring on the changes that are much, much needed. So I hope that you find some comfort in knowing that you are in the positions you need to be in to bring on change. And you mentioned something that's really critical, and that's changing the mindset, right? And that's not something that happens overnight. None of these changes is going to really happen overnight. It's going to take time, but you need to start with small steps, small calculated steps, and you need to be strategic about what needs to happen next. And that's exactly the role of a school board, right? To be in that helicopter view of looking at what needs to be done, and then creating a plan, creating the goals and the objectives, and then allowing the superintendent and staff to carry out and come up with action plans to support those goals and objectives. That's really a healthy relationship between the superintendent and board, is one that is a trusting, respectful relationship, and they work together. You work with Diego. It's not the board deciding on what needs to be done. It's all of you collaborating, put your heads together, and really utilizing your resources and your expertise. So thanks for sharing, Elizabeth. Diego, I'm going to go to you next, since you are right in the middle as well. Your reflections and reactions to the video.
Well, I think that the teacher effect ultimately drives everything that we do in education. I think that there have been thousands of teachers that have worked for the Hollister School District over the last 20 years, 50 years, who have literally changed the lives of children. And I just feel like the message I take away from that video is saying, don't be complacent with how things are today. Don't ever stop innovating. Don't ever stop growing and improving. And I just think that's the spirit of this school board and this management team. It's that we have a really great district, folks. I have worked in other school districts. This is a wonderful town. This is a wonderful school district, but we can be so much better. So let's do it. Let's work together and innovate. And that's what I took from it. It's just, I know it was in a courtroom, but he may as well have been in a lecture hall. You know, he may as well have been giving us a lecture and talking to and inspiring us. So that's what I took away from it, is the challenge to want to be better next school year and the year after that, and just to continue to innovate, and to do it in a way that reaches more children every day.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Jan?
You're mooted.
This is something that I have. Uh, I think we two of our goals fit into this change, and that is the grading and retention at primary level only. Um, Obviously, children have to have the basics. I mean, we have to make sure and ensure that children have the basics, and we have to have benchmarks set so that we know that they can add, subtract, and read and write, and we know that they need those things. But in grading, and this is where I would like to see our administrators. There was a great example in one of the, and I've talked about it with you guys, and it just has sit with me so much that we had two students, and in the summer, one student babysat, and another student went to a summer school enrichment, and it was on writing. And the next school year, the student that had the enrichment class, when it started with writing, the first essay, he got an A, and the student that was babysitting got a D. And then the next one, the kid that had the enrichment class still got an A. And the kid that had the babysitting improved, but it was like a C. But after the semester was, coming to completion, the student that babysat ended up with an A, just like the student who had the extra credit, or he had an A too. Well, if you average the grades, does that student deserve a C or an A when he now can write A essays? And so I think that we need to, as a discussion needs to be had with our teachers and administrators about how do we look at student progress? And are we going to look at student progress? Let's say it's fractions. They start out, they don't know how to do the fractions. But at the end, are they doing fractions and are they getting it and understanding it? Do we keep those low grades and hold back their grades because when they started they didn't know how and now they can do fractions, but so we're still going to give them a C even though now they can do all of the fractions? What are we grading them on? And I would like to see a real good conversation between administration and teachers and to evaluate what are we actually grading on? Are we grading on the final product or the whole product? What is it that we want our children, what are we actually grading our children on? And are we motivating our children or are we, just like, oh well, yeah, I got my C, and there's no motivation to do better. And on the retention, I just think everybody knows if we retain in later grades, they don't graduate from high school. And we need to make sure that if we need to retain someone, that it's done, in the early grades. And I think those two goals that we have in play go with this idea of customizing education that is changing a whole way of looking at it differently in our community. What is it that we want for our children? And how do we want to measure up our kids? And of course, I think the parents should be involved as well on the grading. But But I personally think that we need to have a good conversation about that.
Mhm.
And I just, as a board member, I just want, I would like to see administrators and teachers really have a good dialogue and give you the freedom to have that. That's what I'd like to see done.
Thank you.
Is the freedom to have that discussion.
Thanks, Jan. And I know that the notion and the idea of parent involvement and engagement and better, more effective communication with
Mm-hmm.
your families is one of the goals, one of the areas
Absolutely.
that all of you talked about. And you're all related, right? Studies show that when there is a good relationship between home and school, students do better. Plus, the
Right.
families then understand what needs to happen in school. They are part of the students' education. They can have conversations about what's coming up, what needs to be done. They know how to check on progress. See, the challenge is that so many students leave school and they go home, or now with our online classes, they finish class and then they're really on their own. They may not have the adults they need to hold them accountable and to be part of their education, not necessarily to teach, but to say, well, let's look at your homework. What were you supposed to do? How can you, in your beautiful example, Jan, of the student who babysat that summer and the student who took enrichment, I feel there is so much that student can write about. That's real life experience, folks, to be able to babysit at that young age. How do we teach them? How do we teach students that that is a valued experience and you can write about that experience,
Sure. But
right?
also, yeah, but the bigger issue is this, is that, and when you say that education is stuck 100 years ago, well, that's how we graded 100 years ago. And I think that we need to look at, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve for these children? If you're teaching them coding in computers, okay, the idea is that you want them to be able to write code. Now, when they first started, nobody knew how to write the code. So are you going to keep, because it took a child a little bit longer how to learn to write the code, are you going to give them a poor grade because they failed a couple of times, but in the end, they wrote the code? This is where
Mhm.
if we're going to rethink how we are educating our children, we need to be rethinking how we're grading our kids.
Yeah.
And what is it that we're trying to achieve?
Mhm.
That's the question that I want administration to have with our faculty. And it's something that they need, that we need to look at. As a board member, I'm throwing that out. I'm saying to you, and with the parent, what is it that what do we want to do? Do we want to stay 100 years back in the Stone Age and do it the way we've always done it, or we want to try something different here in Hollister and look at it? What are we trying to achieve?
Mhm. So as I'm listening to you and reflecting also on my conversations with the rest of your colleagues, and I'll make sure everyone has an opportunity to share, because as I said at the beginning, this is a very interactive workshop. It is not, you're not going to be lectured by.
No.
And so I really, you need to have this dialogue. You need to be able to talk about all these goals that you're setting for the future. What I invite you to reflect on is think about what needs to be present in a classroom, in a kindergarten classroom, first grade, second grade, middle school. What is the element that needs to be present for students to do well? Because I feel like we need to go back to the basics, okay? Before we can have more complex and comprehensive plans, we need to go back to the basics of life and the basics of human needs. So share with me quickly, unmute and then share with me, what is that very basic element that needs to be present in a classroom for a child to receive information and respond and
I'm
volunteer?
I'm thinking of something, if it's okay, well, first of all, I'm thinking, with the video, I'm just thinking, of course, the system is set up this way for certain students to fail, people of color, right? So it's doing what it's supposed to do. And it's hard to compare it to a car because the car is based on capitalism, right? And they're gonna innovate because it's gonna produce money. Does that make sense? So, whereas our education system is a system based on systemic barriers. So, to go to your question, I was thinking, for myself as a Chicana Mexican, and went to school here in Hollister School District. What I needed, what I benefited from when I felt that I was less than or not meeting the standard, is a teacher, a counselor to tell me, no, you're doing good, or you can do this, or you're worth, more. So I think going back to the basic is basic uh, building self-esteem, basic encouragement for students, and so that the students can see, what babysitting is a skill, or working like I worked in the fast food in my high school years, and that was a skill. So I think that's what I would see as a starting point for a basic need, right?
Mhm. Mhm. You're absolutely right, Carla. There is write down this name and look at her work. I shared this with your team yesterday as well, the administrative team. Um, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, and she's a positive psychology professor. Take a look at her work that she has done, because she has done quite a bit of work on the activity, on the brain activity, and how when we are in a good place and when we are happy, our brain cells open up and they receive information, and we're actually more creative, and we can participate more openly. And so that basic need that we'll talk about, we'll continue talking about, is what Carla was talking about, is someone who says, you can do this. Your experience is just as valuable as everyone else's, and boost that self-confidence, because when you feel good about yourself, you open up, right? I mean, it's incredible how that happens. We don't necessarily need researchers to spend millions of dollars to tell us that, but we live in a society that perhaps that's needed. We need to be told that yes, this works, and brain functions, and then the brain activity has been measured, and you need to be in a good happy place, and be accepted for you to be able to open up and share. So Lisa, I saw that your hand was up. Would you like to share?
Sure. Um, yeah, my answer was they need to feel seen. The child needs to feel seen in the classroom and valued, right? And that speaks to what Carla was saying, and it speaks to what you're saying. Um, as a parent interacting with children in the classroom when I was like, a room mom or whatever, once I got somebody did, they all want your attention, right? And you give them a little attention and they really open up, and they get animated, and because I listened. And so maybe being listened to also, and I understand that all of these things create just more what do you call, more work for the teacher, right? Because how do you listen to 30 kids? And then the other thing that came to mind immediately was things in the classroom that should generate curiosity, a want to interact with it, because you have different kinds of intelligences, so you have different kinds of ways to stimulate those children, and so presence of as many of those kinds of activities as possible, that they can go kind of interact with it. And then, collaboration, because when they learn to talk to each other, they're also learning, right? And so, and if you have to try to help each other learn, then you're learning more as well, because you have to articulate, right? So those things came to mind.
Beautifully said. Thanks, Lisa.
Mhm.
if you're familiar, and I'm sure that as educators, you're all familiar with the work of Dr. Maria Montessori. One of the things that she said that has always that's always in the back of my mind is that she said we educators don't have anything to teach. We don't really have anything to teach. We can create the environment that awakens curiosity, and that is what we need to do as educators. What you just shared, Lisa, reminds me of Dr. Montessori's um, point on the fact that we need to perhaps pay more attention to the environment and the prompts and the questions that are asked and the topics that are introduced in a way that we can awaken that inner child's curiosity that they want to learn. And once you do that, it's incredible, right? The response you get is just incredible. And that's what we need to get to. That's what classrooms need to be. Thank you
That
for
brings me
sharing.
back to
Stephen, go.
the what Liz was talking about earlier. What was with it? We didn't see a video, but they had a great cartoon that went with
Mhm.
this, and it had all these different animals: goldfish, an elephant, a monkey, a bird, various things. And there's a man behind a desk saying, "Okay, today's lesson is how we climb. How do we climb a tree?" And the first one, you say, oh, I get it. There's, some of them are going to be great at this. The monkey's not going to, you don't have to teach him. He'll just do it, which is like a classroom. However, the fish who I related to, as Liz said, had my struggles as a youngster. To me, the first question I would have had was, why do I need to climb a tree? How is that going to help me in the future? Which gets back to what you're talking about, curiosity. One of the main things a teacher needs to create in their classroom is curiosity. Why do I want to know more? And that's the quickest way to get kids to learn, in my opinion. That's what gets their attention. I want to know more. And if I'm going to have to climb a tree, I have no desire. Why am I listening? Which for somebody with ADD, believe me, that is an issue. If it's not something that you think you're going to use, you don't pay attention to it. It's I can't explain it. That's just the way it is. So I think what you're saying about curiosity is the real key to a good teacher. Be able to create curiosity.
Absolutely. So again, it takes a village, right? You can have the most amazing programs. You can purchase the fanciest, more complex model out there, and trust me, there are tons of programs out there, right? But it goes back to, are the teachers, have they had the right training to implement what these programs are supposed to do? Or is it just extra work and it's up to their interpretation on how it's supposed to be, right? So there is definitely a gap there that needs to be addressed. And again, going back to basics, right? What are the basic human needs? What needs to be present in a classroom for a student to say, teacher, I want to learn more, right?
Yes.
So let me tell you a quick story. When I served on the Oak Park Unified School District, I made it a point to go to all the special events, and not just me, all of the board members. And I have to tell you, we had one of the most, and they continue to be one of the most highly functioning and healthiest boards that I've ever seen and experienced in my life. And so the ability to go to student awards and banquets and student performances and concerts and all that, and occasionally, when we were invited to go to classrooms, I would always take advantage of those opportunities to go in to learn, to see what's going on in the classroom and how I could support the learning, right? So I walked into one classroom, and they had a family who had immigrated here from Iran. They had three boys, different grades in elementary school. And so this happened to be, I believe it was a second grade. So I walked in and I'm walking around and looking, students are all working and writing. And of course, the students didn't speak much English. And, and the teacher was not sure how to connect with this student. How do I connect with this child, right? He doesn't speak English. I don't speak Farsi. So of course, I'm fluent in Farsi. So I went over and I tapped him on his shoulder. He was doodling. Everybody else was writing. He was doodling. And I said in Farsi, I said, how are you? And like, welcome to Red Oak Elementary. And he just opened up. And there was this huge big smile on his face that somebody understood him. And so right there, right then, and right there, I thought, well, he's going to need some help because he's obviously he's very bright. All students are bright. I am a firm believer, and I believe this with every fiber of my being, that everyone is intelligent. We just have intelligences in different ways. And we were born and created to do different things. And the challenge for, not challenge, but the opportunity for all of you in education, for all of us, is to help students figure out what their talent is, what their passion is, and help create a plan for them, right? Help them create an action plan to get there. So right there, I thought, how can I help this student? Because we didn't really have, back then, I don't believe we had any Farsi speaking teachers or counselors or even students. So then I realized, well, I have two students at the school. I had both of my kids are at that school. Now, my kids don't speak, they're not fluent in Farsi, but my daughter spoke, or at least understood enough to be able to connect. And so I went back to the principal and I said, would this be something that might work? For my daughter to spend some time with this student, and maybe at recess or however you see it fit, because I don't want to tell you what to do, but I feel that you can really utilize her. And she was known as a leader. She was in 5th grade at the time. She was student government president. And so I felt that she could also do the job, so long story short, it ended up being a great partnership. And that was a way to bring him into the larger, population. And he's doing fabulously now. And he did very quickly, as children learn so fast. But it's about getting out of thinking, as I call it, the concept I like to use, from the edge of the box. So rather than being in the classroom, for your teachers, for all of you educators, and think, well, what can I do? What has been done? What is possible? Asking yourself, what can I make possible? How can I utilize the resources I have? How can I think from the edge of the box? And the idea of the edge of the box is, how we are told, think outside the box, which I think is fine, except that when you're in the box, you miss out on what's outside the box. So my concept is, you sit at the edge of the box, you have access to what has been done, history, traditions, everything that you need to know about how things have been done in your district, in your classroom, in your organization, but you're keeping your eyes on the future. You're also keeping your eyes on outside the box, what's going on outside the box. In the video, he talked about other countries that are doing wonderful things in education. We have great models out there that we can look at, right? So when you have that edge of the box view, you're seeing what's successful, what has been successful, and then what is possible. Does that make sense? I hope. So that edge of the box thinking. All right. Anyone else who would like to share? Again, this is getting us to discuss the goals for next year, and to have an open, honest, very transparent dialogue on what needs to happen for you to achieve your goals. So unmute and share if whomever is ready and likes to share.
I could jump in. Just sitting here and reflecting, listening to everybody share, and based on the video that we saw, for me, what that brings up in my mind is building relationships. Certainly, we need to continue to grow and improve in education and modernize. But to me, none of that can happen until we really, really build relationships, which a lot of us are amazing at. I mean, I know I was reflecting back as we were sitting here thinking about Jan and Steve, and the three of us taught together back at Mays Middle School. And I can remember being in their classrooms and working with them and being on the same team. And it was about building relationships, because Seppi, you talked a moment ago or earlier about meeting students where they are, right? You were reflecting on that idea of we have to meet students where they are. Well, we have to, in order to move forward, we have to first know where people are, and that's students and families, parents. And so as I'm reflecting on that, I'm thinking about goals for parent and family engagement, social emotional learning, all really important, exciting work that we have ahead of us. But for me, it always comes back to building relationships and really listening to the kids. I love what Lisa said. They want to be seen. I can remember all those years being a teacher. That's what they want. They want to be seen and connected to and heard. Then once you do that, once you have that rapport with them and that relationship with them, and you really genuinely see them, then you know where they are, you meet them where they are, and then you can move forward with transformation and changing and modernizing and growing. But that just, it excites me to think about that, to think about young people and really looking them in the eye and connecting with them and knowing where they are. So that's what that brought up for me.
I'd like to kind
Thanks, Kip.
Just one thing,
Oh, go
Kip,
ahead.
it's also that mutual respect as a human being. That there's that, when you treat that child with the mutual respect of a human being, one on one, the communication it's very important, but also to them, it's that mutual respect that we're one human to one human, and they need that. They need that desperately.
We were talking about how things don't improve in education. One thing that came around, unfortunately, is right after I retired. The concept of a teacher standing outside of the door and greeting each one of those students as they come in. In junior high, you do it 5 times, which is great because you have 5 times the amount of students. But it gives you a chance to actually know them. You get to know. You don't have to even talk about anything education. Oh, how's this? How's that? Whatever. They know you and you know them. And to me, that's what you need to do, create in a classroom. I used to make it an absolute rule that I talked at least for 30 seconds to every student I had in class during the 50 minutes that you had with them. Make some kind of contact. They have to know you're aware of their existence. If you let somebody sit in the back of the class and never say anything, you're going to reap what you sow. You can't ignore people. They're there. And if you want them to be part of the class, you got to make them feel welcome in the class.
Beautifully said. And my question to all of you, and you have all shared just wonderful angles. You're all looking at it from a different angle, but all with that same main thing that you're keeping in mind, right? So how much of what we are talking about here, of all these discussions and conversations, is being shared with your teachers or with teachers in general, right? So we know what the right thing is, and we actually have experts here. We have teachers, former teachers here, current teachers here, right? With this team, with your governance team. So you're all experts. And so how is this information shared with the teachers who are in touch, who are in contact with students on a daily basis from the moment they walk into the door when we're in person or even online. There are still ways that you can create that loving relationship and let people know you care even when it's virtual, right? How much of that is really happening? Feel free to share.
Well,
I,
I think
I need
that's
to
kind of, sorry, Jan.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Liz. Go ahead.
We went with capturing kids' hearts because we knew the basic foundation of that was, connecting with our kids um, at that level. And as Lisa said, when a child is seen um, and heard and valued for who they are, regardless of where they're coming from, what they have or don't have, um, that um, they hold a precious spot, you know, um, in your life as a teacher. Um, and so I think that really sends such a strong message to kids everywhere, because you can see those kids, like Steve was saying, from year to year, when you had a good teacher that really made you feel like you could conquer the world and made things interesting regardless of the subject, because they knew, okay, Steve's going to learn with this. Let me introduce, even if it was English, but let's put it on, what does he really enjoy? If it was, the solar system or whatever, write about something that really about, that you're passionate about. You're still writing, but let's focus on the areas that you're really, honed in on,
What's important to you?
that is important to them. And you as a teacher, when you know that, then you're bringing out those, those abilities in these kids and lifting them up. And again, but it's like you said, how do we get teachers to start reflecting like that? And really, we have some teachers, without a doubt, that do that every single day. um, but overall, as a district, getting all of us to be there, um, and even transitioning into the high school, because that's the kids that I work with. And when I see kids like right now with long distance, a lot of them are struggling. They're so disengaged because they don't feel like they're being seen, and a lot of them are failing. And that's what's going to be hard for our kids to, you know get out of this life right now that we've been living in, this COVID stuff. And if adults are struggling, I can just imagine how kids are feeling with them, and then not having a venue to really talk through things with anyone. If they're not able to do that with a parent, or someone at home that they feel comfortable, sharing, who do they go to? And so, they wouldn't have necessarily, like so many people sometimes, it's a lunch lady, or so many people make a different impact. It could be a lunch lady, it could be your bus driver, it could be your yard duty, it could be so many different people when the kids are at school. um and so that to me, like you said, it takes a village, it takes all of us to really um filter into these kids lives and try to make a difference. But it's how do we make that reality, where we start building on that, and as everybody knows, it starts with the teachers and that professional development, and really bringing videos like this maybe to them, to start looking at things like that, and changing that mindset of how we start teaching our kids.
Mhm.
Yep.
Um, Something you mentioned, Elizabeth, that I wanted to make sure I talk about briefly is that when we think of educators and people who influence and make a difference, automatically we think about teachers, which is true. They have big and huge influence on how students turn out to be, and their beliefs and their values and their self-confidence and all that. We somehow we miss out on all the other adults on campuses that are equally important. Elizabeth, you talked about the yard duty, the lunch lady, the bus driver, right? Um, all of those individuals come in contact with our students. And all it takes in life is that one individual. It could be anyone on campus. It could be someone from the district office who's just visiting campus, right? It could be your custodial member who's cutting the grass. That one person who makes eye contact, who knows the student, who maybe asks how the student is doing, creates some kind of relationship. And Kip talks about relationships, and they're so critical to everything we do. That one person who can make a difference in a child's life. I have shared with you, I know I shared this with you last year when I worked with you. There is a great quote by Josh Shipp, and he says, um, I'm trying to remember it completely. He says, every um, every student is one caring adult away from being a success story. One caring adult. That can be anyone. So how do we take all these ideas and what we know in our heart and what research has backed up? How do we bring them to all of our staff members, everyone on the campus, on your campus, right? In your district, on your campuses, because everyone is equally important in that sense, and they have the ability to influence and make a difference. I want you to think about that, because what we are going to do is we'll take, in about 10-15 minutes, we'll take a 10-minute break, stretch, use the restroom, refill your cup, and then we'll come back and we'll continue working on what we're talking about, but specifically set some goals for next year. So I like each of you to reflect on a few different areas that you feel is really critical for the governance team to focus on. And then of course, not everything is going to happen all at once and in the next year, but at least we have some areas of focus. And then we can go to Diego and staff to say, bring to us some action plans to support these goals. This is what we like to see. This is what we want our Hollister family to do or to be able to do. Okay, and I already know some of those areas because you have mentioned that to me. But again, I want this to be a collective discussion. You're all in this together. Each of you is equally important in moving the district forward, and you all need each other and each other's expertise, right? There is what your team has that's the basic for any healthy functioning team, is that basic level of trust. And that's the foundation, right? When you have trust, you're able to ask questions, you're able to ask for clarification, you're not afraid to share an idea. So you're able to have dialogue, very open, honest, and transparent dialogue that then leads to commitment. And these are the layers, as explained by Patrick Lencioni. That's another great book. If you ever want a good book to read, is Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And again, it's trust that's absolutely needed. You already have that. So that's great. So anyone else who wants to share on the video, or going back to that basic need that needs to be present in the classrooms on your campuses, not just in the classroom, right? But on your campuses, all of your campuses, what needs to exist? What's the basic, one of the basic needs, human needs? feel free to unmute and share. Again, it's a very informal format. This is your meeting, unless you're all ready for a 10-minute break. All right, so the time that I have is 6:11. Come back at 6:21 and be ready to start working on goals and the goal areas, focus areas for next year. And then we'll devote the rest of our time together to setting some goals and organizing them a bit more to bring them to focus and create focus and clarity around those goals. Does that sound good? All right, see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back. I know you're coming back slowly. I know 10 minutes is not much time. I apologize.
I can't get my picture to come back on.
Oh,
What am I doing wrong here?
I'm back, and if you figure it out,
There it is.
you got it. Now Jan and Carla, I wonder if, and every device is different, isn't it? I've learned.
yeah, I don't
'Cause
know. I don't know.
I used to be able to say, oh, just go here or there and click on this. And then I realized, well, depending on what they're on, it could be different. So
I've been
thank you,
trying
everyone.
everything.
That's all right, Jan. You'll get it. Keep
It'll
trying.
come, it'll start. Okay.
It will. So thank you, everyone, for coming back. Before I forget, I wanted to thank our colleague who is translating. I thank you for being here. And I know that this is something you do for all your meetings, which is really important because we want to create that connection. Not I. You want to create that connection with all of your families, and many of them speak Spanish. So thank you for being here, for your help, and also if you can translate and let the families who are listening thank them for me for their commitment to their students, for being here. It is a Thursday evening. I'm sure people have other things they could be doing. There are games and shows and other things going on. But I really appreciate them taking the time to be here and to listen. And I hope they find it valuable. All right. Am I echoing or is it just
Yes,
I
you're
hear
echoing.
myself? Oh, that's not good.
Now you're not.
Okay. Oh, I wonder what the problem was. Okay. Well, that's good. All right. So continuing on, here's what I like to do. I want to briefly talk about roles and responsibilities of the board and the administration or superintendent and administration. The reason for that is because we do have one new board member. So Lisa, and we'll spend more time on this hopefully at future workshops, but I just want to make sure that you are clear on the roles and responsibilities of the board versus superintendent. And what I would like you to take a look at, what I invite you to take a look at, is board policy 9000 and 9200. So 9000 is the roles and responsibilities of the board, and 9200 is the limits. As you know, there are limits on your jurisdiction. So, and then also take a look at board policy 2000, which is the role of the administration. And I believe it's 2010, which is the superintendent role. So, and I'll send those to you in the memo that I'll send. So you can take a look, ask colleagues if you have questions. But basically, as a board, you decide as a board. So no individual board member has any authority to create any action, to make any decisions, to promise anything. It's when you come together, that's where the power comes in. And you are the ones as the board, you set the goals and the objectives for where the direction of your district, and then you leave it up to your superintendent and staff to come up with action plans to support those goals. Of course, having open and honest and transparent dialogue is really critical. And that's where that trust comes in. When you have trust, then you're able to really collaborate. You don't ever say, well, that's not my job, because then everything is everyone's job in a way, if that makes any sense. So any questions, Lisa, on that? Okay. And the other thing I would like to suggest to you is to take a look at Masters in Governance classes that are offered throughout the year. I know Jen and I believe Stephen, you have taken Masters in Governance. Am I remembering
I
right? Or
haven't. I don't think. I
I
don't
know,
recall.
okay. I know Jen, you took the board president workshop and you have to
You're
unmute.
muted, Jan.
I do want to take it, and it's something that's on the radar. So
Okay.
it's definitely something I want to do, and I'm
Those,
hoping this.
go ahead, sorry.
I'm hoping to do it this year while it's virtual, because frankly, I think one of the silver linings I think about the COVID virus is that I kind of like this virtual stuff. Uh, I really do, and I've gotten a lot out of it. And when you think about the climate and driving, and you know, I I don't know, I like this. I just think it's better for us. And as my eyes get older and I don't see as well, I really like it.
Hmm. And you're
So.
not alone. We hear that from a number of our members that they prefer and they hope that will continue with the virtual classes as well as in person, depending on what you like to take. Elizabeth, I think you have taken some masters in governance. Am I right?
I've taken pieces of it. I haven't
Okay.
done the whole thing back because when
Okay.
it started, it was in sections.
You know, I would like to bring up one thing before we move off of this subject. The last time we did this, we weren't in individual districts. When you ran for the board, you just ran and you're just one of the boards. Now we're in 5 separate districts. And because it seems to me like it is to the public somehow you are when you are elected from this particular district, that somehow you have more power on the board to speak for them. Yeah, I don't think the public fully understands you're just one person and there's 5 members on the board. And maybe because they were used to the old way, I don't know. But I could see that might be an issue. I don't know what to do about it, but they don't have the idea that, you know, there's 4 other people on the board and everything is put to the vote. So that's just something to throw out there.
Yeah, because we only have one pot of money.
Yeah,
We don't have 5 pots of money. We only
that's
have
right.
one pot of
And
money.
you don't have special privileges over this
Yeah,
fifth
no.
of the pot.
Yeah.
Very true. And I feel the more you communicate that with your families, with your stakeholders. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but over time they will understand how your decisions are made, and they understand that pot of gold that you're all working on and spending from. So again, the idea is to be able to have those open and honest and transparent conversations with your stakeholders, all of your stakeholders. So with that, and so what I was getting at with Masters in Governance is that these courses that are designed to help board members fully understand and comprehend the responsibilities that falls on their shoulders. So as a new board member, so the first time I was appointed to my board, and then I ran in the following term. And I can tell you that it was the courses that I took and the information that I learned that really helped me understand what my job was as an individual board member and how I could support my team and my colleagues and ultimately support students. All right, excuse me. All right. So, what I like us to do now is to open up discussion and let's talk about goals. In my conversation video, the board members that I was able to connect with, you talked about a few different areas. One was engaging or gaining parent involvement or family involvement. And you had begun some initiatives pre pandemic, and you had plans with different campuses, and that was going all well. But with pandemic, closing of campuses, going online, all of that has come to a halt. So let's talk for each of you. Here's what I like you to do. Hopefully, you have already narrowed down the areas that you feel are really critical to focus on. And so you're going to share those areas, and then we'll come back together and we'll talk about what needs to happen next. So, kind of create a little plan of these are the areas of focus, and this is what we want to focus on first. Kind of create a phases of change. And I invite everyone to participate. I want to hear from all of you. Again, parent involvement or engagement was one. Enhancing your communication was another one. I know Jan talked about the grading system, and there's some other ideas that you want to implement. Let's see what we can do to organize the focus areas and figure out what makes sense to take on first. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. So I can either call on you or you can volunteer. I mean, it's very informal. Again, you all feel comfortable with each other. I'm comfortable with all of you. Feel free to unmute and share, and let's see what we can do.
Well, what had happened is that Carla and Diego and I sat down one afternoon and came up with these ideas of changing the focus of grading in middle school, um, because an F carries 59 points on the point schedule scale, and we need to change that because they're failing way too many kids in middle school. And retention in middle school pretty much guarantees that a student will not graduate from high school. So we need to get, and we have too many children entering sixth grade that don't know their times tables. So we need to work on retention in the primary grades and not at middle school, and focusing on organizational skills for our primary grades so that we start like in first grade. If the teachers and administrators decide, well, let's make sure they have a language arts section, and the next year, language arts and math, and, each year focus up that their binders are separated, whatever they decide, but they have an organization every year. It's growing and growing so that we're not looking at a garbage can for a backpack in sixth grade. And unfortunately, students that are not succeeding cannot find a piece of paper. They don't even know where their homework was. And I'm not telling anything new to people that have been in the classroom. They know what I'm talking about. We need to work on the alternative program. Are we going to hold on to our children and not farm them out? Keep them with us. Um, Increase our parent involvement, inclusion in special education, uh, PE, and inclusion in PE next semester. Um, Human resources during the hiring, maintenance, getting the cross training, and doing our two by two with the city and maybe eventually with the county. And of course, our parent involvement and possibly the parent ambassadors. So these are things that we had talked about um, and at different levels. And Diego talked with the senior administrators about it. And so, what we need now is how do we corral this? Do we throw things out? We're at that stage. Do we put things together? Is something not feasible and we need to get rid of it? And I think Diego, I'd like to you to kind of take over from here on this.
You all know my personality, Jen. You sure you want to tell me to take over?
I do.
You're all gonna have to hold on really, really tight and just
I know. You're our
stay
chief.
with me. Um, I think what is essential for Kip and Gwen and Erica and myself to know from the board is, you know, Jan just listed off a series of things that if we can accomplish those things, then will have done a great job. And at the same time, I always think about how to organize things into areas so that I know when I'm doing my monthly and quarterly analysis of how far we're getting, I can't do that with 9
Right.
areas. I can do it with 4 areas, or I can do it maybe with 3 areas. 5 might be just a bit outside. Um, and the big thing for our team is if we try to focus on 9 things, we'll make progress. We will. But we might only make 30 or 40 or 50 or 60% progress on each of those 9 things. So at the end of the year, you all might say, Diego, we didn't accomplish it. We're a little bit further along, but we didn't accomplish it. Or we could say, we're going to focus on these 5 things and we're going to finish these 5 things this year. And these other things, we're not going to forget about them. We're going to put them in our second year. And we are going to get to them. Because so that's kind of, to me, that's what tonight is about. It's about hearing from the board, these are the things, and there's nothing else we're going to come up with in 3 months or 6 months, or we're willing to wait until we do this next year to add those things. Because that's the biggest thing. Once you all pull the string back on me, you know what's going to happen. We're gonna, we're going to move. But we've got to, once that process has started, it needs to go. So we've, as you probably can imagine, we've already started to try to organize some of this. We've already started to try to piece this together. But if it's okay with you, Jen, I would like to hear from Liz and Lisa and Steve and Carla. Just, you heard the list Jen went through. Is there anything that wasn't on there that we should have a conversation tonight about that we want to prioritize for next school year, for the upcoming school year? Sorry.
I have one thing.
Yeah.
My biggest concern is getting the kids back to school.
Yeah.
And to do that, in my opinion, we need to get the vaccine as soon as possible to the Hollister School District so that our employees can be safe. That's, to me, right now is the #1 priority. And I think a lot of focus right now, if there's anything we can possibly do to expedite that, to help that, to me, that's the #1 mission for our board right now. We need to get the kids back to school safely. And safely would mean we have a vaccine for our employees. So I don't know if we can accomplish this tonight, but I would like to see that as be one of our highest priorities because we need to get them back to class. And to me, that's the fastest way to do it. This isolating and blah, 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 blah. No, bottom line is we need to get the kids back in the classroom.
Well, and Steve, thank you for saying that. I think there's 2 things school districts will do in the next 60 days. And this, you know, it really is up to this board to direct me in choosing one of those two paths. We can be passive and we can watch to see what happens. We can read the same news that everybody else reads, and we can watch the same news that everybody else watches, and we can go to the same webinars, or we can be more proactive. We can sit down as a management team and we can put together draft letters that we send through the chain of command to our county office, through the chain of command to our local legislators, through the chain of command to our state legislators to demand prioritization of schools. But that takes time and that
Yeah, I
takes
know.
resources. You know, that isn't going to happen overnight. And it isn't just a one-time thing. It would be something that I would have to devote time and resource from myself. More than likely, this would fall on me and Erica because it's a, you know, it's fundamentally, it's an employee issue. And then on the student side, Kit, but I think it's important. I'm glad you mentioned it because I think it's for the next 5 months, it might really be the most important thing we do, you know?
I think so.
And Jan, I see you have your hand up, and Liz
Yeah,
too.
I just read like at 3 o'clock this afternoon in the Chronicle. Um, we teachers, schools, the number two round is going to be teachers, police, and firefighters. So to me, I think our emphasis should be with CISC because it's going to be treated like flu shots. It's going to be distributed like flu shots. And where, and you know how CISC would bring the nurses and be giving them out at the district sites. So I think our emphasis might be with CISC first
Okay.
and find out where they go from there. But it looks like because it is such a huge equity issue to get kids back in school, they are now realizing that teachers need to be on the next tier. So the way the politics is working out, it looks like teachers are going to be in the second tier. The healthcare workers are going to be in the first tier, you know, and the skilled nursing areas, they're in the first tier. Second tier is our police and fire and teachers, and that's what it said in the Chronicle today. Lisa,
Teachers, just Stephen had said it before too. It's not just the teachers though; it's all the people on the campus, right?
Yeah, it has to be.
And is the government looking at it that way?
Well, we'll see what our
I
state
hope
does.
they are.
Yeah, we just can't have the teachers that way. It has to be
No,
everybody.
No,
that's
I
not
mean,
equitable.
Yeah.
but that's part of the, I think what Diego you're talking to about as far as going through that chain of command and up into the legislature to make sure that they are prioritizing not just the teachers, but the other school
Oh,
employees
yeah.
as
It has to
well.
be all of the school staff. Yeah.
Right.
In our, I think it was the report I read was somewhere around 300 doses came to our county. Is that right?
Yeah,
The
not
first
even.
batch. So that was 1A. Just to give perspective,
Right.
we have 600 employees in our district. So that's 1,200 doses we'll need.
1,200.
That's
Yeah.
our district. The high school district has 300 employees. That's now 2,000, give or take. Southside, North County, county office, you're going to be talking about 4, 5, 6,000. And I think that's, to me, the kind of the big picture about it is we gotta, if the board wants us to prioritize being actively engaged in that, it will need to be one of our goals to basically ensure that it remains a really high priority for us.
But I still think CISC is your first phone call.
I want to jump in this conversation. So I think I'm not sure that for me that's my highest priority goal, although I think it's important, obviously. I think from my perspective, when even if the kids don't come back to school right away, I think regardless, right? We've talked about the mental health piece. And I'm really, that's where I feel really passionate about. When I went to the CSBA workshop, it wasn't just mental health for the students, it was mental health for the staff, it was mental health for the families. And so for me, I think that's going to be key with us either returning. So imagine if we were to return, let's just hypothetically say in March, we start slowly coming back. Can just think about the impact. So the other day I took my daughter to walking at campus because now we open the fields. And you know what she said? She's like, "Oh my gosh, mommy, I haven't been here since we left. And I feel weird and I feel sad." So emotions are going to come up for all of our students, right? When they go to the classroom, when they go to the lunchroom, when they see their teacher. And can you just imagine the emotional? I mean, just thinking about it, right? So how do we ensure that those first couple of weeks we have social workers on hand, or and even like prep our teachers, like, you know, just check in with everybody, just, let's make sure that, are you okay? And so I'm just throwing out some ideas, but for me, I would like to see that be included in one of our priorities, um, along with, some of our other urgent needs. But for me, that's one that's pretty important.
Well, to
Along
me,
with the parent involvement, that's a big one for me too.
yeah,
If I could put like my two, parent involved community, right, which we're already doing, so I don't know if we have to put it, but anyways.
when I brought up what I brought up, the whole concept, this is a total thing. It's just not, hey, everybody gets to go back to school now. We have to prepare for this. You're right. Even in March, which I don't think is going to be possible, but even in
Right.
March, that's a whole year. Those kids have been out of,
Yeah.
nobody has ever gone through that before.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what this would have been like when I was 10. I couldn't. I don't know how. Well, we couldn't because we don't have we didn't have the technology. But the idea of no school for a year, wow! It's just something it's incomprehensible, and yet here we are.
You want to talk, Elizabeth?
And the other thing I think, apart with what Carla said, is mitigating the learning loss that we know our kids have had for really not being, like Steve
Yes.
said, in school for a year, and how to measure that. How do we support these kids that in certain respects have lost so much, in education, um, from our special ed students to our our socially economic kids, every range of child right now, um, and figuring out, day one, what that's going to look like for those kids. So what priorities are we going to set forth? The mental piece is perfect, because yes, we need to make sure everybody is ready mentally to be back on campus and be ready to learn. And then how do we engage these kids to make up for that time they've lost?
Yeah, that should all be part of the package. That's what I'm talking about. That when I say bring the kids back, that's what I'm talking about. All of this has to be taken into consideration, and that's why we need to start planning for this now and not just say, oh, okay, now it's time to go back. You see what I'm saying?
I hear you. Got you.
Things that we're talking about have to be part of coming back whenever that is. But to me, that's coming back safe. Not only will we be safe from the virus, but we'll also be more mentally safe bringing them back. Just not, be prepared for it. Everything needs to be prepared for, including the employees. They've been gone for a year. I mean, it's going to take some getting used to, and that's something we need to be thinking about. We can't just snap our fingers and say, okay, everybody come back.
Then I'm with you. I understand what you're saying now. It's the full package
It's
of
the
what does it
full
look like?
package, and that
Yeah,
to me, that's our highest priority. That
I
full
got you.
package. How are we going to bring them back?
Yeah, we
It is
might.
the full package, but there's segments of it that the team needs to really prepare for each and every
Yeah.
piece of that rollout to make sure that we're addressing all of our kids' needs and staff.
Well,
Yes.
I think we need to really make sure that maybe there's even some opening with the school, maybe
A
assembly.
welcome back,
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
to
Well,
some
kind of
kind of
break the
a
yeah.
ice.
yeah, an icebreaker of some kind where
Yes.
there's
Look what
games
we're
or
doing. Look what we're doing with the schools. We're fixing up the fields. Wouldn't it be nice for them to come back to a nice note, a different school almost, even though it's the same school?
yeah, but I think that we need to give our people time to think about how they want to bring the children back,
Mhm.
and it should be in a way that lets them to reacquaint
Quaint.
with their
Yes.
friends
Get used to
and
school again.
teachers, and then we also need time for our teachers to
Right.
become
And
a
not
support.
ready, not so much ready to jump back into business day one.
No,
It's
I'd like to see it
breaking
a
that. Yeah.
social, to see some kind of a social where they
Mhm.
are brought back together socially, maybe a breakfast or something where they, you know, are brought back. And I'm not saying a big old thing. I'm talking about where the staffs at their school sites, where they can, get their camaraderie back and hey, and that kind of stuff. We need to bring our families back. Schools are families.
And
Diego?
we've got Lisa and Carla. Lisa?
As I sit and listen to this, and I agree on a lot of fronts, I see it in a bigger umbrella that encompasses communication in a large
Mhm.
amount, both in
Mhm.
setting the stage and in also in implementation. So communication's got to be high up on that list too. And I understand the whole social thing, but I feel like if we're going to do it that way, and by the way, I think it should be done that way. The way I think it would most seamlessly go on would be to start the next school year. You know what I mean? Set the expectation that there won't be any in class, with maybe the exceptions of the small cohorts that we have discussed, as far as, trying to test out protocols and things like that. But with the expectation that um, the full amount of children wouldn't return until the next school year, so that there's plenty of time to do all that we're talking about right here and do it smoothly and communicate it and make it like an icebreaker of sorts. 2020, 2021 sucked. Let's start over, really prepared and looking forward to, and because here's what I'm thinking: if they go back to school as a whole thing between now and May, end of May, basically before end of the year, right?
Right.
Because what are we in, 1 week into June, and then it's the end of the school year?
Yeah.
If that
Too.
feels like a start and a stop, and in and of itself, it could feel traumatic.
I see what you're
Because
saying.
you just get back into the swing of things and you're separated again.
Yeah.
You're going to move to another grade. You're
Yeah.
going to the next grade. The next year you start the school year. So
All
what are you
sorts
with
of
them for 2
things.
weeks?
Yeah.
All sorts
And we
of things.
do,
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah. That's a
and we
good
do,
point.
and we do have Carla. Carla, your hand is up.
Oh, sorry. I had it from earlier, but I'll just chime in
Oh,
real
it's okay.
quick. I think
I didn't want you to get left out because we can't see you.
appreciate it. No, I
Yeah.
think what Lisa's saying, I'm totally feeling too. I mean, I've heard, you know, we've talked about this, right? Like the pandemic's not going to be over in March, realistically.
Mhm.
So how do we look at taking our time, right? So yeah, just good conversation.
Here's my question for the board. And if you all want to give me a one-word answer on this, that would be awesome. If our state and federal government figure out how to give us more money, if they can figure that out, and the money will likely be directed to learning loss, what Liz brought up, basically catching kids up and meeting the emotional needs of kids. And we have parents who are clamoring for summer school in a way that is totally unusual. Usually our parents have to be kind of cajoled and kind of, you know, kind of worked with to get them to send us their kids. This might be the biggest demand for summer school we've ever seen in our lives.
I agree.
Does the
I agree.
board support us creating a huge summer school program if we can swing
Yes.
it?
Yes.
If it can be done safely.
Right. Well, that's exactly. And
Right.
see, if we do that, then maybe we accomplish two things. We nourish the soul and we grow the mind. We're able to do both. We're able to
Like it.
get kids with each other, get kids connected. And you know how our team is. We'll put in the work. Well, none of us will complain about
never
having to
worried
put that
about
work
that.
in.
That's not what
And
we're worried about.
yeah, everybody, and I'm not talking about me and Kip, and I'm talking about the team, the 600, the people,
The employees of the Hollister School District.
Yeah,
the
we're never worried
people
about
who
that.
have been working, doing jobs they never did before because of coronavirus will continue to do it for us. But I need to know on the board level that that's a priority, because if it is, then we need to add that as a potential huge uh, goal for us. And so I want to, if I can for the board, I want to present to the board a little visual that kind of explains how I organize in my team, the basically the look of how we put those goals into categories, because I think it's important for the board to see that.
Yep.
So if I can, um, there isn't any sound, so don't worry. But if you can give me a thumbs up so I know you can see my screen, and I'll make it much bigger. Yeah. So the first is social emotional learning. And that kind of breaks down for us as the social work programs that we know need to happen, because I think what we're going to be facing next year is we're going to be facing children who have counseling needs, but also have adaptive social needs, have their parents have lost jobs, their parents have gone through divorces, their brothers and sisters have had to move out of the house, they've had to move in with their grandparents. It's more than just their internal feelings, it's more of a social work, bigger family need that we're going to need to face next year, and we're going to need to step in to help our children. And that goes along with the idea of creating a parent ambassadors program. So that, to me, those two particular goals would be something we can pull off in the upcoming year that would basically say we're able to address these needs. We're able to make a big difference for our students if we can create a parent ambassadors program that's district wide. So there's an equity focus, and that we're able to put social work programs for every school. So that, again, there's an equity and a district wide focus. Any questions on the social emotional learning? How we kind of organize that? The next, and this is another huge priority, is the school to prison pipeline. I think we have a responsibility to finish up the process that we started this year. As you may or may not know, today was the day of one of our first task force committee work meetings. So myself and Kip are working very closely with Dan Ortiz and Crystal Lamonto and a team of people who are helping us, including our parents, who are helping us revise our school discipline policies and procedures. And we'll be presenting that to the board next month and again in May, because we believe that work that's already in place, it was part of our plan from last year. That's the building block for these next two goals, which is addressing our very serious concerns with grading in middle schools, which Jan alluded to, and then addressing the issue with all our alternative programs. And it may result in us creating an alternative program that we can piece together, that we can create, that we can develop for our students. Questions on how we are thinking about addressing the school to prison pipeline?
The only thing I'd like to say is that I would, when you're working with your administrators and teachers, is that I'd like, I I don't know how the other board members feel, but I would like you to give them some leeway in how they do it, point system versus non-point system. And, looking at a portfolio aspect of things and looking at end product instead of, um, counting points.
Yeah, yeah. I think grading for multiple modalities and giving teachers tools, we want to do that. I also think that there are some practices that we just need to, as a school board, consider changing our policy so that we, at the policy level, we make the decision easy. We make it fair. We make it equitable. And then obviously give people time to work through their grading practices and policies.
Sure.
Because I think what we all can agree on is we don't want to have a school district where 17% of kids are getting D's and F's in every class, or 25% or 30%. That's an unacceptable outcome. So evaluating and changing our grading policies for us is a really big priority. And it's definitely—
Diego, I have a question.
Mhm.
On the alternative program, which I think is exciting, is it a realistic, is that we're going to get that started, or do you envision that that's a realistic goal within the year?
With the board's direction, it is a realistic goal within a year.
Awesome. Okay.
But it'll need to be a priority. It'll need to be a priority. And the other thing about it is, it's the question of, do we do something on paper, or are we really making a difference? Because I think there are a lot of districts that do things like they'll create a program, but really it's kind of on paper. It's like, oh, it's just that teacher's classroom on that part of campus. And, they still show up here every day and they still do the same thing, but, oh, it's a different school code. And we're not thinking about it that way. We're truly thinking about how we create a program that meets the emotional and academic and personal needs of children who can't make it in the middle school. That's what we're thinking.
Excellent. Awesome.
Can I chime in for just a second?
And Liz had her hand up too, Steve.
Oh,
so after you,
I can't
Liz.
see hands. Liz, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to let you speak, Steve. Go ahead.
Basically, and I thought about this earlier, but it really applies if you're going to talk about grading in middle school on an alternative program. Jan and I spent a lot of time in middle school. And one of the things we found that's the most effective is early intervention. Right from the beginning. You don't wait. If you see a problem with any of your students, we had team teaching, so it's probably easier for us because 4 teachers shared the same 150 kids. And once a week, we would have meetings simply to identify kids that are not being successful. And then once you've identified non-success, you don't wait, you start having meetings. Parents come to you, start having teachers meetings. You start trying to if an alternative program is a great way, it gives you options. What can we do to help this student? And we're not waiting until March or April or May when we have to retain them. We shouldn't have to do that. These things should be taken care of at the beginning of the year and have parents, everybody involved in the beginning. Don't wait. The longer you put off stuff like this, the less if you wait to the middle of the year, you might as well not do it. Yeah. You have to start from the beginning. And I'd like to see, maybe not just in middle school, every school, a little bit more done, I should say a lot more done at the beginning of the year. If somebody can't I don't know, do something in second grade or third grade, times tables, whatever, that should be identified. There's a reason for that. They're not doing that because they don't want to. Something's happening to prevent them from doing that. Well, the only way you can get down to this is if you recognize it early and do something about it, or try to do something about it. So I'd like to see be more effective in that area. To
More
start
proactive.
the school year.
Yeah.
I think for me was looking at, the aspect of, the discipline also, and correlating with, our kids' needs and the ones that act out. Why are they acting out and getting into
Yes.
trouble and wanting to get kicked out of class? Because
Yes.
it, for most of them it's like, this, I can't learn. I'm either too distracted, or, we don't even know what's going on at home, why, what kind of environment they're being raised, what kind of parents they have, whether they're involved or not, or they care or not. I mean, there's so many factors to why certain kids act out, and get in trouble. And, instead of waiting for, like Steve said, waiting for these kids to get into that situation, and by junior high, you know most of their living situation is still the same, and as they get older, they start understanding and differentiating themselves from other kids, and really putting themselves in that category of, I don't fit here, and so they start acting out again. So it's just trying to figure out, how do we support these kids so that they don't end up, we don't end up shipping them out. We don't end up, you know, even taking them to an alternative program. It's trying to figure out, as young as, the younger they are, and building, um, really strong, either, we have SST, but I don't know how, like with some of these kids that have had discipline issues, really, have we really figured out what was going on with that child? And how did we determine meeting the child where he is or she is, and building on that to develop and support that child so that they can be successful and they don't end up being kicked out or sent to an alternative school, and fail all these classes, because it's once you start down that path, we lose kids so quickly, um, and when we lose them to different things, in this community, which is, if you got gangs or whatever it else they have, in their lives. So, um, I want to be able to kind of expand that, and really start breaking it down a little bit more, to really stop, and it starts with, again, our policies, and looking at, um, how we're going to support these kids versus how we're going to punish them.
I used to tell my teachers when I was a mentor teacher that you give a student an F for the year, you've just given yourself an F for the year, because you have failed as much as the student. You didn't
Wow.
do enough to try to prevent that. That's the way I always looked at that.
Jan?
Yeah.
Um, just to go along with what Elizabeth said, um, I think the idea, what you saw today, Diego, at 7-Eleven, our
Mm.
children have a lot of things that they deal with.
Mhm.
And so trying to learn at home in a dysfunctional environment is pretty tough. And so if we, getting the social workers in at the primary level to help with dysfunctional families, we could give those kids a chance. And the maybe, because a lot, I just think sometimes it's pretty hard to learn if you're being driven around in a car with what you saw, Diego. How are those children going to learn?
Or
And
your car is
and
your home.
and Jan,
Yeah.
that was the one family I saw. How many families are
Well,
that happening in the home, and is that happening in the car? And I just think I think what you're all hitting on, and Liz, I hear exactly what you're saying about when a child checks out, and having been an elementary school teacher before, when a child who's 9 is going through a lot, they'll withdraw from you in the classroom. And it's very evident because, you know, children come to school, and if you're if you're doing your job as a teacher, you know every single one of them. Like, you just know their little cues, their body language, their face, their smiles, their winks, and you know when something's wrong, and you talk to them, and within a couple of days you connect with that child, and you say, oh, this is, I need to deal with this. I need to talk to this child's family. Teenagers are much more difficult to
Big.
hone in on. They're coming in and out of your class for 55 minutes. You know, a lot of teenagers are just kind of quiet. They're in their own world. They're talking to their peers, and so it even gets harder at those middle school grades, and definitely at the high school grades, to be able to see that child. And that's what I think is so important about this idea of an alternative program, is that it's not about kicking kids out of school. It is about helping children in crisis. It is about finding children who are struggling at our 2 comprehensive middle schools and doing something about it in a way that's compassionate, that's equity driven, that's family focused. And I just can't think of a better person to lead that than Kip, and his ability to bring people together and connect with families, and put something together that we can be proud of. And then if it's the board's wish, it becomes a priority, and we turn it into something great. We make it something really wonderful. And
Can I
yeah.
offer a couple things on the alternative? I'm thinking because school to prison pipeline, let's say what it is, right? That disproportionate Chicano Latino children in our district, mostly young men, are not able to meet the bar. That's what it is, right? And so I think we need to say that, and the alternative program has to have an element of culture, of ethnic studies, of this empowerment for them. And then just something to consider, because I participated in this thing at the high school because my daughter's a freshman, and they said that they have an outrageous number of young Chicano or Latino males that are not graduating, not passing their are getting Fs. And so they're really concerned, and it's the 9th grade that they're targeting. So I'm just thinking, we feed the 9th grade, right? So just something for you and Kip maybe to consider about, what are we going to do? Do we do some kind of pilot work with these 8th grade young males at the alternative program? Do we start at 7th? So just a couple things to think about. I don't have the answers. I'm just kind of brainstorming with you.
Yeah. And you know what, Carla, you're one of the few people that in education, in the role that you have, that are brave enough and willing enough to step in and to say out loud that our Latino and Chicano boys are not meeting the bar, and that we need to do something about that. And I think it's important for parents who are watching this, and for educators who are watching this, to know that there's an elected member of this board for who that is ever present. That's a real thing. That's something that it's in our face if we're willing to talk about it. And obviously there's a real passion among the employees to try to make that right. And so let me use that as the way to connect to the other piece, which is achievement. So the board is very familiar with the fact that we've adopted a science curriculum this year, that we adopted a math curriculum, that we have an adopted English curriculum, that your Footsteps to Brilliance program, we're absolutely crushing any expectation that anyone had. We're exceeding 150 million words read in December, which is it's mind blowing. It's like one of the best results that anybody could have imagined. But we have some your ELD curriculum you purchased and adopted for our middle schools. So the message I want to give the board is I don't want to tinker with that. I don't want to bring in 5 more curriculums. I don't want to change curriculums. I don't want to confuse staff. I don't want to spend money on things we already have. We have some really, really good curriculum in this district. And I want to stay the course on all those things. And based on the direction from the board, this is how we would zero in on improving academic achievement. In addition to all those core things I just mentioned, footsteps, Eureka, benchmark, science, ELD, retention in primary grades, really becoming efficient, becoming more compassionate, communicating more with parents, like Steve said, when you're finding kids early on and doing something about it. I'm still gonna, Jan, I'm gonna try to throw 40 or 50 different names up on a wall and see which one sticks with you. But we have to find a way to explain what we mean by building a system to create organized learners, to create children with skills that they can apply to their school, that skills that they can apply to build on their learning. You know, you'll have the half left brain and the half right brain, and one half will say, that's really hard for me. The other half will say, yay, I've been waiting for this all my life. But we have to be able to get to the half that needs it and to teach it to them and to show them and to build it with them. So that's another area we're thinking about. And then the last is there's an acronym there, LRE, which stands for Least Restrictive Environment. That's where Gwen's department comes in. You all know, I think, you know, Gwen's work in the district and her team's work in the last 2 years has just been exemplary, one of the best I've ever seen. But we have a new hill to climb there, and that is to effectively give our children with special needs access to their core learning, to stop taking them out of regular classes and pulling them away from their English, math, science, and history classes, and to give them support so that they can succeed in those classes. Because I can show the board the very, very clear relationship between pulling children from their core classes and seeing their achievement go down, and their transcripts start to turn into D's and F's, and their credits start to go down. And when they get to high school, folks, and they haven't had English instruction for 3 years, the effects are damning. They are devastating. So those are the 3 academic pieces we're really looking at, is the retention process, the primary organizational, and then giving kids access to stay with their peers in English and math and science and history, and to get support in that RSP type of class that we know we can really provide them support in.
Can I?
You got your hand up? Yep, you got your hand.
Is that Kip or me?
That's you.
Okay. Having some experience in this again, I think as long as we're speaking with Gwen, one of the problems that in the past, I don't know if it's been rectified now, is I was a history teacher, Jan was too, and science teachers, they're the ones that get RSP kids in the inclusion. What would have been really nice if we had a chance, every special ed student that somebody has on their caseload, to be able to meet with the teacher before school starts, and say, look, this is their IEP. Most of the time, I don't know if you back me up on this yet, we had to guess. We had to start, we shouldn't have to do, they shouldn't have to do that. That to me is one of the most essential things a special ed teacher could do. If you're going to put them into a regular school classroom, well, the teacher has to be aware of what's going on. And okay, it would save so much time
Yeah.
because I would have to find that out on my own, or
And you
I'd
know
have to
what's,
show up at an IEP meeting or something like that.
yeah.
That
And
has to
Steve,
change.
you know what's interesting about that, Steve, is that I've been an educator for 22 years, and most of it spent directly with special ed. And I have literally never heard a person say that before. But let me tell you something. In our business, in our line of work, it might take you 22 years to hear an idea that you just say that actually makes total sense. The
It wouldn't
idea
even
of
take that long, an
the
hour
idea
maybe.
of a preview,
Yes,
for a child with
this
special
is what you're
needs, to
getting.
be able to hear from the teacher what is expected, and to know
Yes.
without 31 other kids in there where they feel compared, judged, scared, nervous. That's wow.
And in the IEP meeting that we go to, because we're their teacher, it would be so much, that way you could relate more to what, because you started off, this is where we, and this is where it'd be so much easier to just show up at an IEP meeting, because you know what you see, but you don't know anything about the student themselves before they got you. So, or how they do in other places.
Yeah,
It would just be nice to have that information.
that's a great idea, Steve. Jan, if you're talking, you're on mute.
It has gotten a little better that teachers are notified a little earlier, but there is a lag time. And I'm sure Gwen has improved on that since I've retired. But uh, there, it would be nice if there was more communication between general ed and special ed about students. That would
Yeah.
be helpful.
So let's talk about the last piece here, which is effective management. That's the best way that I could wrap my brain around what that last area is, which is really about the district's management. And when you have a department that has 13 employees or so, the maintenance department, and you have a department that has a responsibility to keep, a couple tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate and buildings in tip-top shape. We can't have a culture where there's one person in the district that knows how to handle any one thing. We have to build a culture where 3 and 4 people know how our electrical systems, how our alarm systems, how our heating, how our
Okay.
irrigation systems, all that. We have to basically cross-train people, and that will definitely be it'll be work, because you're talking about actually changing a culture that has existed for many years, and confronting that culture and working through that. And then on the human resource process, I think what the priority from the board of having a person that you trust and that you value in Erica serve as a panelist on each and every hiring, that's a high standard for her, and that's a lot of work for her. And it's work that for many years, as you know, it's been assigned to assistant principals in some cases, sometimes principals, other managers. But if we had Erica Sanchez on every single hiring panel, our human resource hiring process would greatly improve immediately. But it will take a huge chunk of time for her. So that's the key there, is acknowledging that her role will need to shift, because I think we all can agree hiring great people is one of the best things that we can do. If we can turn that around, then Erica, you ready to do lots of interviews? I have total faith. I get excited thinking about it, actually, because I know the people we bring in are going to be quality people. And then the last piece is the 2x2, and that is going to fall on yours truly. Mr. Ochoa is going to have to put in a lot of work there, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to we're trying to say, open the door and work with us, but we're also trying to say, we have a lot to offer. We have a lot to engage. It's not, let us hear you out. It's talk to us, engage with us, work with us, because together we can do a lot. And I think that gets to the heart of, you know, how this governance, to bring it back to SEPI, how this governance can truly make the 2021 school year a great year, is if the governance team is clear that the things on this screen are the things that I plan to prioritize. And they're the things that you all want me to prioritize. And you're going to let me put plans in place with these administrators and these teachers and these staff to make this happen. Because if you do that, if we come to that agreement, you're going to be pleased in 12 months. Just like we have in the last 2 years in terms of accomplishing a lot of the things that we've accomplished in the last 2 years. So with that, Seppi, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Diego. And thank you all for contributing and continuing on this discussion. It's really critical that you give clarity and direction to Diego, who can then run with it as he has, and he has shown you in the past 2 years, to be able to do what needs to be done to move your district forward. I heard a lot of great pieces of information tonight, and I have to tell you, the idea of being proactive and putting measures in place to prevent problems in the future, that's something that I feel needs a lot of focus and attention. Okay, so when you talked about the what did you call it, the management skills at primary level, right? That is a critical key to everything, because when students are just expected to know how to keep organized, okay, I mean, that's just something that we all take for granted. They should know how to take notes, to study, how much time they need to spend on studying, how to manage their time. The reality of it is they don't learn that. They don't learn it at home. They don't learn it in the society. There's no time for them to learn it at school. But if we don't go back to that basic, and again, the basic needs of humans, just feeling comfortable, feeling welcomed, feeling noticed, that should be priority for in every classroom. And then focusing on those skills that are referred to as soft skills, I call them essential skills. Because if you don't have them, you struggle in middle school, you struggle in high school, you will struggle at work. We see it all the time, right? All of us see it around us. So the other piece that I heard that's really wonderful to hear is that you need to have proper support and resources in place for all of these wonderful programs to be successful, right? So just having a program is not enough. How are you supporting the structures? How are you supporting your staff to be able to carry out these curriculums and then the programs that you're initiating? So I think what Diego showed tonight, the visual, is it's fantastic in the way that it's focused. It has the 4 different umbrellas and areas. And I want to make sure that before we are done here tonight, that you, Diego, are clear on the direction from the board, and you feel comfortable moving forward, taking this on with your team.
All we need are thumbs up, Seppi. If they give me a
oh, that's
thumbs
all
up,
you. I know that that's all you need.
There you
But
go.
I guess, do you also need to know? And I guess you're asking the board. I want to make sure that you have clarity on that. Is this something that you like the board to prioritize, or are these the umbrellas and you and your staff will then go and see what makes sense in what order? Okay.
that's
Okay, I
right.
just want to make
That's
sure.
right, yeah.
Again, is
Because
everyone clear on that?
because I want the board to hear that from me. You know, I need time in the next 60 days to get this all crystallized into some plans. And we obviously want to engage with our teachers and our parents about these ideas. And this is the marquee, right? This is up on the marquee, but we need to build the script for it all. We need to build the story for it all. And we have Lisa and Jan and Carla. Did you have your hand up, or was that an old hand?
Old hand.
Okay.
Was Jan next? I saw Jan's
Lisa and Jan
hand
were
up.
next.
Lisa was Lisa, go
Actually,
ahead.
Jan, go first because mine's more of a question. So
And I have
Okay.
to tell you, I'm on hour number 11 of Zoom meetings. So at this point, I'm going to be moving a lot and
Okay.
stretching.
Okay.
I just
I'm
don't want you to think I'm being rude. I'm moving a lot.
no problem. I have two questions. One, do we have enough people? Do we need to hire more people? And do we need more money in certain things when we're doing our local funding LFF?
Mhm.
So, do we have we made those changes? Do we, when you start your new, you know, I guess when we say yes to this, do we
Mhm.
need to make some changes that we're going to make in our budgets to allow this to happen? When do we have to do that?
Yeah.
And what do you need from us to make
Mhm.
that happen that'll
Yeah.
work with your plans?
Yeah, and I wanna go back in time a little bit for the
Hmm.
board, because I wanna make sure that Lisa, as the new board member, knows one of the biggest things that I feel caused the district to be able to get that momentum to move forward with this board's direction is we streamlined things at the district office, and we moved
Right.
funding to sites, and we pared down the district office. Um, and so one thing we have to do is we have to prioritize money for social workers.
Right.
That has to be important enough to the board. That has to be important enough to the board that we prioritize funding. And it will mean that we have to make reductions in other positions. So it does,
Okay.
because of the reality of being a superintendent and being on a board, you have to prioritize. And so I'll definitely have recommendations for the board. As far as what's left in administration to cut, there's very little left.
No, I
There's
didn't
very,
say cut. I said
yeah,
add.
I know.
Okay. All right.
But I wanna front load this for the board. If we were to address the social work need in the district that we believe exists,
Hmm.
it would be possible if we were able to make reductions to other programs. And that's an important thing for the board to hear and to start to think about. But that's a process, and the budget process will begin in the middle of January, and it will be based on the work that we have started today. As you know, you all will adopt a budget in June.
Hmm.
It's your regular board meeting in June.
Right.
And the governor is going to give us a budget in a few weeks, hopefully, and then change it all again in May, and then change it again the week
Right.
after we adopt ours. But um, the main cost will be the cost of facilitating um, that social work program. I do want to talk about the alternative program though. So the alternative program is different. The alternative program will not cost the district a great deal of money because we typically lose children that drop from our district because
Hmm.
we don't meet their needs. So
So it'll be
this is a
self-funded.
replacement from something we do to something we will do. And then we have facilities that we believe can house this program that are ready made and ready to implement. Um, and many of the other goals that we just went through and talked about, the human resources goal, um, in order to free up Erica's time to be able to do what we want her to do because it's a priority, I'll have to shift some duties, but it won't necessarily cost money. It will require a shift in some duties so that we can accomplish this new goal. Um, and I definitely want the board to know the analysis on the cost and the analysis on the timing is something that you'll all start to receive in January and again in February. and take it through a process. And then Lisa, you have your.
I was so intent on listening to you that, oh, I just am curious about the communications. I'm going to go back to communications again, I guess, is because part of what I think we need to do, I mean, we're good right now, but a lot of people are disgruntled, you know, with the whole distance learning, et cetera, et cetera. I think we have some reparation of trust, and communication is the best way to do that. And so what, if any, are there plans for, you know, getting that out there and building other opportunities and avenues for that cross communication?
Yeah.
So,
Lisa, will you define that for me? Will you say our website needs to improve? Our
well,
Facebook
definitely.
needs to improve. Because that's what I need to hear from you. Because
Okay,
if you tell me
I'm
that,
happy to analyze that because I haven't done that yet, but I know that that right now it appears to me I couldn't get any information. I didn't even know you guys really used, what is it, San Benito Live? I didn't even know there was a San Benito Live, okay? And so like maybe it's about redirecting what we use as our avenues or creating our own. And I know that we discussed on a very high level, like even social media channels and using them the way that the high school district uses the social media channels to get things out there. And I've been seeing a lot more of that, and that's great. But I'm also thinking, is there a place on the website that is like a community bulletin board?
Yeah.
Where people can like put in things, just another avenue. These things I don't know, but I'm happy to take a look at what already exists and make those recommendations for sure. I'm just saying, I hear and heard when I was running that, you know, there's people who don't really understand what's going on. And so I immediately go to a place of, well, how can we better get that information to them?
Yeah.
So.
And you're hitting on something, Lisa, that I think all of us are shaking our heads right now going, yes, our school district webpage and all our school web pages need to improve. And I want to see thumbs up from the board because I personally want to add that. I personally want to add that.
Can't
Okay,
see your
good.
thumb, Carla.
You can't see my thumb, but the other day I went on the website and I was like, oh my goodness. So yes, thumbs up, please.
And one more thing, my first board meeting that I was going to just watch in preparation of possibly winning, I had to call a friend who has children in the district to tell me how that worked, because I didn't understand the whole, I went to the link, but then there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And it just shows up immediately. But if you don't know that, like I didn't know that. So these are the sorts of things I'm talking about, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanna address that, Lisa. And I want my team, Erica, Kip, Gwen, and you know, a lot of times in these meetings, our administrators are listening in at home and our IT staff is listening at home. What we're all talking about is something we all encounter when we're out, when we look online, but it will cause us to have to make a shift in our approach to things. I'll have to work with my IT department to identify a person who will begin to focus on the district website as part of their priority duties. And if I do that, that will cause over the course of the year, and you'll see a great improvement. But currently we don't do that. Currently it's catch as catch can, put something on there, email this person, ask that person. And I personally want to address that. And actually I've had conversations with 2 board members this month about that very topic. So I'm grateful to you, Lisa, because you bring that awareness about the communication, about the two-way, the aspect of how things get transmitted to the community. And I just really am thankful to have you on the board, bringing that perspective to us. And Liz, you had your hand up.
And that's perfectly on point, because even with your, in-house communication, and key for an effective school district to run comes through communication, and our staff hearing it from our, people in leadership versus rumors or, whatever is being said out in the community. It's so important. The first key point is always communication. The second, is having respect for one another in that process. And the third, you build that trust. And so, for us to really be effective, and not just internally, but how we're seen, it starts perfectly with that piece of communication, and building on that. Because and being okay with having, it has to be a two-way communication. People should not feel like, you know um I'm a board member, but I'm everybody's board member. I'm not just the administration's board member. I'm classified, I'm certificated, I'm parent, I'm student, I'm everybody's. And I want them to feel that, but again, it starts with us and how we communicate out to them.
I agree, and personally, I would like to see uh, our district hire a company to do a website for us, and then have one of our technicians monitor it then, because I think our technicians are so busy with the virtual learning. I just think it's too much to add on another duty. And believe me, I know nothing about, not going to pretend to know anything about how to do things with the computer. Brandon will testify to this. But what I'm trying to say is our website is in woeful condition. It needs to be desperately replaced. And I don't want to put another burden on our tech department. And so I would, and I don't know if we have to, I guess we'll have to do it in January, but
Mhm,
um, if we could find a company that will do it for us,
mhm,
and then our tech department maintain it,
mhm.
I think that would be very reasonable.
Well, and I want to just I want to validate that point of view, and I want to ask the board to identify the uh, requested improvement and put me to work. Let me work with these incredible people and figure out how to make that happen for you. Because I think there's an answer in there.
Mm.
You've got to give me the time to put that plan in place and
Well, if you
and
would like me
hand you
to,
something in 6 months that you go, oh yes, this is much.
You
This is
haven't
I
let us down yet, Diego.
no, I think everything that you've put together tonight, and if we need more money, if we need to, what you and your group, what your lead administrators and
Mhm,
what your groups decide, the teachers and everybody that you work with to make this plan happen. I think uh,
yeah,
we as a board should speak now,
yeah.
and I'm going to say a go. Steve, how do you feel?
Yeah, whatever you need to do to improve our webpage. I would like, yeah, I
Well,
got
what about the plans here? What about
the
his?
plan's great. That's
Okay,
everything with
Elizabeth?
the idea that our main goal is to get the kids back into class. I love your summer school idea, Diego. Love
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
That's a perfect transition. You couldn't be any better.
Elizabeth, how
So,
about you? Are you a go? Carla, are you a go?
I am. I just had one thing that I heard Diego say about the social workers costing more money, and I understand, the investment, but I just want to understand when we took away the SRO
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah,
contract.
Mm-hmm.
didn't that help the funding for social workers? And we also have the social workers that are going to come from the universities, the interns, and I believe we have partnerships with county mental health. So I think there's, right? So there's other areas. I'm just trying to understand how much more it's going to cost. If is it significant, or are we
Yeah.
balancing out?
Well, it's this SRO program and the school council, the school social work program, they're not close to being balanced. So the SRO was a little bit around the $200,000 annual range. But what we're currently looking at, and these are still in draft form and we want to get them to you soon, is every single school in the district. When we open up Rancho Santana School, which is going to serve all of our Gavilan Hills students, that'll make 9 physical campuses. So that's $1.3 million. That's the cost of putting in place. But what that means, Carla, is it means it's not a grant. It's not a flash in the pan. It's 9 people doing work that we hope becomes part of your annual budget year after year. So that it because we're repairing the way a student's home school life connects. And so you can't just do that for 1 year. That social worker's got to work with the 5th grader, the kinder, the 3-year-old who's going to become a kid, the whole family all the way through. And it definitely does help us that we save those funds from the SRO program. I also think that there are other efficiencies that the board will be very glad to hear about. One of which is our National School Lunch Program application process. We have been able to enroll more than 250 kids into that program in the last 2 weeks than we would have in previous years. And we still have a goal of another 300 to get them in between now and the first day of January. And that is a major game changer in terms of funding. That's $500,000 a year for each of the next 3 years if we can pull it off. And I think we will. And the other thing that, I think the board is aware of with our administration and our efficiency is we look at things like building the right sized classes throughout the district and making sure that we don't make any foolish decisions like having 34 TKs in a class or 36 second graders in a class. And we build our schedules and our school classes so that we have entire schools where there isn't a single class where there's more than 26 or 25 kids in a TK through 3rd grade. And that's a big change, but it costs money. And I think we've seen the benefit of doing that for each of the last 2 years, and we should continue to prioritize doing that. If we do that, that's again, it fits into the balance of how we're allocating our dollars. And I think we can pull this off, Carla and the rest of the board, if we do it in a way that's very equity focused, that we know, for instance, Kip has been awesome working with the kinship group here in town. And that group has essentially put the money down to hire a counselor social worker that will work full-time at our Hardin Elementary School, starting immediately. It's a full-time person that they're hiring. But
that's awesome.
Here's the thing, Carla. I don't want to then not hire a social worker for R.O. Hardin. You see, another board or another superintendent might say, oh, R.O. Hardin got one from the kinship group, then they don't need one. Well, that's grant-based. That could go away in a year.
Agree.
And then what do we tell those kids? Oh, sorry. Oh, there's no money to add one a year from now or 2 years from now. I don't want to do that to that school. So it's just one of those things where it's an equity focus and it's a conversation about how we prioritize funding and make smart decisions that in the end save us money on things we don't want to spend money on. The other that I'll bring up to the board that is a goal for the next 2 years is transportation. I want to build a transportation program for this district, and it'll save us $250,000 a year.
Yay!
Stop paying to have this companies charge us to drive our kids, and we'll just create our own program. And it'll be a challenge and it'll be a lot of work, but I think we can do it. And I think we'll be smart about taking those dollars and putting them into programs and services for our students. So
I need to get a vote from Lisa. Are you good with this program?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have everybody's vote.
Mm.
Diego,
yeah,
so you've got our approval.
I know that I don't have to tell you this because it's written all over my face, but I'm thrilled.
Hey, we're thrilled too. Really, I love this.
Here,
This-
let me do this so you recognize me. Now you know what I think
You
and
have
feel
to
because you
paint a face.
You've
about-
seen me
Smiling
like this.
eyes. Smiling eyes.
Yeah, my eyes get really small when I smile.
I resemble that.
Well, I said to Diego yesterday that this will be the first time we're going to start the new year with all of our key employees on a real positive note. We don't have any naysayers. Everybody's on a real positive note, and all of our key people. I mean, we are just a lucky bunch, and our children, everybody we're blessed, and we have just a bunch of really positive management, psych management. I mean, we're very, very blessed, very, very blessed.
Yeah.
And Seppi, this has been what you put together for us tonight. It's been wonderful. I'll let you close us up.
I
And
just
it's
want to
been
say, Jen, before, is thank you, Erica, Kip, Gwen, because you three are, Diego's right hand, left hand, everything you can name it, and you guys are amazing, and we can't say it enough. We appreciate you so much,
Yeah.
through all of these challenging times, through COVID. We've only made it through because of you guys,
Yeah.
and the people behind you and your teams and every single individual in our district. We truly are blessed. We're thankful for you guys, um, your passion, your love for what you do for our kids, for our community. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I wish everyone, a happy holiday and a whole new, brighter new year. And just blessings all around.
You're making me
I-
cry.
Ditto.
Liz,
I'd like
I'm
to
gonna-
jump on that
Good
too,
job,
because
Liz.
I've dealt with a lot of boards over the year and basically district offices. This is by far the most efficient, streamlined, effective district office we've ever had, or at least the times that I've been with the Hollister School
Yeah.
District. And I am so proud of all of you guys, and I really appreciate all the work you've done for us.
Yeah,
Big
and
time.
I want the board to know Seppi was with us yesterday from noon until 3:30, and one of the comments that Erica made at the end of the session was just feeling so valued that the board would approve Seppi to work with us and to build our camaraderie and to build our connection. And at the end of the training, Seppi asked us a question that we were all basically sobbing at the end. She asked us who we think of and who we think of when we do our work and who inspires us. And I was talking about my mom, and I have 3 brothers, so 4 boys with their single mom. Oh my God! If you guys even bring up my mom, I start getting tears. You just, it doesn't take much, but there's a lot of heart. It's not like we're not one of those teams that we just show up to work and send me a check at the end of the month and I'll finish my report. These are people that care. These are people, you're looking at 4 parents of children in this district, either current or just gone. So we care. I mean, we're all in, and Seppi's ability to draw it out of us so that we can say, okay, yes, it's time to get to work, because now we feel connected and we feel supported between one another, and we feel that we're on an equal level with each other to start the work. And I also want, Seppi, if you can talk a little bit about the board governance handbook that we can put together, down April, end of April, kind of May timeline, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Certainly, and thank you so much for that beautiful closing, Diego. To talk about the governance handbook, the governance handbook is really critical because it's your living document and it's your onboarding document that you can use, that will house all of your processes and protocols, what you believe in, what you expect from your superintendent, what he can expect from you. And so it's really a wonderful process to create it and own it, because it's yours. It's not a handbook that will just sit on some shelf and collect dust. No, it has your mission, your vision, and really a lot of conversations that take place that will be now in writing, all in one place. So it's critical that you have that that handbook. I know you already have one, but Lisa was not part of creating it. And really, when you have one new board member, you have a brand new board. And so we need to revisit your processes, your protocols. We need to do the activity on expectations, on communications, how you plan to move forward, and how you plan to behave as a team. That's really important to talk about. So we can do that at another workshop if you choose to, and I will be happy to facilitate that. And then it will have the component, it will be the creation of your governance handbook and also revise of your protocols to make sure that moving forward, you're all operating from the same set of rules. So that we can work on in the future. I do have one last, I know it's 7:58, but I choose these videos for the teams I work with very carefully, and I do put a lot of time in choosing them. I have one last video to show you, if you're okay. I believe that one is only 3 or 4 minutes, but I want to make sure that you all watch it. We'll come back and then I'll say good night. And does that sound okay? Is it okay? Yeah, we'll go over a little bit. Okay. All right, Diego, can you please play that? Thank you.
Good morning, Roshan.
Uh-oh.
Fingers crossed.
Let's try and go off video also. Sometimes that.
All right, class, settle down, settle down. Today's assignment is a little bit different to what we usually do. Today, I've got a question that I want you to answer. And the question is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, I want you to think about this very carefully. Answer it honestly. Don't worry about what people are going to think, because nobody else is going to see this. I do want you to think about why. Take your time and answer this honestly. All right, class, that's all we have time for today. Can I please have your sheets as you're leaving? Thank you. Very nice. Thank you. Well done today. Good job. Have a nice day. Thank you, Boomy. Thank you, John. Bye, Chand. John, can I speak to you for a second?
Yes, miss.
John, I think you've misunderstood the assignment.
Miss, I think you misunderstood life.
In the hope for money, in the hope for success, we end up chasing the wrong things and we make a mess. We end up with less than we started with, end up with more issues than we bargained for. Whilst climbing that ladder and that stairway, we forget why we started climbing in the first place. Once, the king of Bhutan was asked by an interviewer what the GDP of Bhutan was. He was surprised and shocked. He replied by saying, in Bhutan, we don't just measure the GDP, we measure the GNH. Instead of just measuring the gross domestic product, we measure gross national happiness. In the process of getting older, we forget the real goal of life. If you could make a little less and spend more time doing what you love, would that make you happier? Don't trade your happiness for what you think you need. Things can never make us happy because they're temporary and limited, but experiences can last forever. Too many people are working hard on things they don't love, to spend money they don't have, to buy things they don't need, to impress people they don't like. When we create our identity around what we do, a career, a job, an occupation, we can never be happy because we're basing it on something external. But when we create an identity around who we are and what we want to be and become, then anything is possible. And remember, we become successful by what we get, but we become happy by what we give. Don't get the two confused.
Thank you so much, Diego, for playing that for us. And so I leave you with one last reflection for you to reflect on this evening and moving forward. What is your GNH for your district? Gross national happiness. And how do you measure it? And what is that number? It's been such a pleasure and honor to work with all of you. Lisa, it was so nice to meet you. I'd heard so much about you from your colleagues.
It was nice to meet you too.
Kip, Gwen, and Erica, I thank you for your commitment, for being here. You don't have to be present at these workshops, but you put in the time. And I can tell you that this team, your team, inspires me. You bring so much hope to me for the future. If we have leaders, if we can just duplicate what you do and all of you and how much you care, this world would be a better place. So thank you so much for caring, for your leadership from the heart. And thank you for allowing me to accompany you on this journey. It is just so wonderful to work with all of you. And one last thing, do not forget to send me your feedback form. I have sent the form to Diego. He'll forward it to all of you. I do look at your feedback. I do care about what you have to share. And again, you empower me, you inspire me, you energize me. And I just thank you so much. Happy holidays and be safe, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy
holidays.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Erica, Kip, Gwen. For the board, remember, we do have to close the meeting because we are in a meeting.
All right.
I'm not going anywhere. Bye, guys.
All right. Well,
Bye.
Thank you, Kip, Erica, and Gwen.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Here we go. It's 8:05.
05. Thank you, everyone.